Hello and welcome back, everyone. Wait, what are we doing? What are we doing? Why aren't we having EU5 beats in the background? A terrible mistake. Alright, let's turn that down. So, there was a new patch. There were some changes. We're going to talk about some of the changes. Overall, some pretty big stuff regarding metagame. Naval proximity. Or just actually, let's just, before we talk about this, just like as a sort of introductory preface, just regarding, generally speaking, talking about metagames and balance pre-release. This is still a pre-release build. And, you know, where stuff is going to fall when the game releases is still tentative. We are getting close, but still with the caveat that, like, don't necessarily freak out if something's not exactly the way you want it. And also, I think that a lot of things... I think people are going to have a lot of fun, even if, like, the metagame isn't balanced for, like, the people who already have hundreds of hours of the game. You know what I mean? So, like, a lot of things being like, oh, you could stack too much of this, so it's a problem, type of things are just kind of not going to be that relevant when you're first initially playing a game. I specifically am frustrated by proximity balance just in general, not in terms of necessarily outcomes, but the entire process seems to be this wiggle back and forth. And maybe it's finding a sweet spot, but my suspicion is that the proximity is just kind of an impossible thing to balance as long as it's a discount modifier, and I just generally don't like it as a discount modifier. So, and I don't want them to try and overhaul the modifier system, like, before release. There's, like, a month out, and at this point... Hey, Ham, how's it going? At this point, I think my philosophy regarding what they should be approaching and what they should be focused on, even though I am generally going to talk about balance of this type of thing, is that there are a couple situations that do not seem to be completely polished, and I'd rather they just focus on situations and stuff like this rather than, like, balance everything in this type of thing. Most importantly, as a simulation change, the simulation is still really fast. If that's what you mean. One of the things is, like, when you completely conquer a nation, when you get rid of all nations, so here's a little bit of a culture map. When you get rid of all nations that have that culture, the culture's tradition, like, drops to 0, and then it gets converted very quickly. And so specifically when you eliminate someone, you get rid of it very quickly. Also, assimilate area is the only area interaction that's, like, accessible in the 3rd age, and the other ones you have to wait until the 5th age, and it just makes things very, very fast. So, just generally speaking, the Japan situation doesn't seem where it should be, and the HRE seems like it has some issues. And so I think that should be the main focus. But also, in a little bit of news, I have hit over 1,000 hours, and I'm at like 1050 right now. And also, we did a Sunni Castile run. So, yeah. Was Bailiff nerfed, or am I way behind? The Bailiff was nerfed, but you're also way behind. It was nerfed. It wasn't nerfed again. But, okay. To talk about some changes, I'm just going to run through the list of changes really quick, because I know people on the forums like to make a list. Land values and other sources of flat land proximity have now been reworked to be percentage proximity across land, which is all well and fine. However, it just, generally speaking, makes it easier for nations that have 1 or 2 sources of prox cost to reduce proximity cost across land to 0, much like how Russia could do it before. Russia's been nerfed, but with these changes, Russia could still reduce proximity cost across land to 0. Naval was nerfed. Instead of being able to hit a flat floor of 1, they can now hit a flat floor of 3. And by my understanding, there is a modifier that's not like working exactly properly on naval, which should make it even worse when it's working properly. So naval's kind of getting gutted, and land is looking really good. I think that there are 3 or 4 nations which give over 10% prox cost, and they are Vijayanagar, Delhi, I think, Ottomans definitely, and Russia, and all of those probably can reduce costs to 0 with the additional land values and itinerant court giving minus 20% prox cost across land, and I think there's another source of it. Let's see. You have to have at least minimum 50% maintenance on army, navy, and forts, which prevents the AI from getting just fort rushed. It also prevents forts from being completely free. This seems well and fine. Diplo as a resource is more greatly pressured. It is harder to maintain subjects and alliances, generally speaking. Ormuz, Denmark, and Russia have all been nerfed in terms of having really, really strong proximity modifiers, but the Russian nerfs don't overcome the fact that they now have new tools. Denmark doesn't have the flat reduction, and neither does Ormuz. Ormuz was, for a hot second, the strongest nation in the game in terms of bonuses, because they would get -5 flat procs for naval, which would always just, it would reduce everything to 0. The entire military meta has changed because a bug was fixed that I didn't realize was a bug, so a lot of notes that I took is a little bit invalidated. And what it would do, just to like kind of briefly cover it, maybe we can find a thing with new military UI. Okay, just briefly what the bug was is you were not supposed to be able to overstack a front, and when... Here, let's actually pull up a paint thing. You were not supposed to be able to overstack a front, okay? And what would happen is you would have 3 fronts, you would have the boxes, and you would decide how many units are allocated to the box, okay? And what you would do is, if the frontage is 10, you assign 10 guys to the box, and then they can engage, and once they engage, now they're in battle, and they fight, and they do damage and stuff. Engaging, or your ability to engage, is driven by initiative. So initiative is a useful stat. But what you used to be able to do is just put 20 people in the box. When you auto-sort, or when you auto-balanced, it would just put 10 people in the box, but you could just manually put 20 in the box, and then you would get twice as many dice rolls. And I thought this was WOD, and the idea is if you're getting twice as many dice rolls, initiative matters a whole lot less because you can just stack more troops and get more dice rolls and get the same amount of engagement anyways. So if these were low initiative units and high initiative units, both would be able to saturate the fronts. Now, the way it's going to work is only 10 guys will roll. Now it's only 10 rolls. I still think it's worth overstacking, but when you auto-balance, it's going to instead put everyone in reserves. Back here. And so I still think you want to overstack for, like, reasons. Like, it takes a while to move from reserves to a front, but you will no longer get the additional rolls to engage. And this, like, strongly informed, like, the metagame of what was good, and you could kind of abuse the AI, and you could beat much bigger armies by virtue of getting guys into engaged faster. And so what would happen is you would have, like, 10 guys engaged, right? And they would have, like, guys trickling in, and so your 10 guys would be beating up the 3 guys or whatever, just because you had a more saturated front. I thought this was WOD. It's not. It changes completely how things develop over time, and it's a bug. And so this is going to be a pretty big difference in terms of what's going on. Proximity seems like it's going to be consistent adjustments for the next few months. I think it's never going to be like I think you either have to make proximity modifiers just so neutered that you can never get above 50% reduction, or you have to have it not be a reduction modifier. Just like as a sort of general type of heuristic. Don't you know if the Russia AAR was recorded on the new patch? I don't know, but I don't think Habibi was like trying to break the game either. I think he was trying to record video for the game, and he set a very like simple goal of, and not necessarily saying it's easy, but it was a simple goal of 10 million pops. and I don't think he was like pushing as hard as possible as much as he was trying to like record stuff for a video. He didn't stack a bunch of the proximity cost reduction stuff and like get like infinite proximity everywhere. So yeah, Habsburg Austria has nice content. They have some content. Critical question: is the fun? Is it still fun after all that playtime? I'm still enjoying it. Not as much as like when I had only like 100 hours or something like this. But I'm still having fun playing at this type of thing. But yeah, so this is a huge change in terms of, I think people weren't necessarily trying to optimize, but I was trying to optimize, or I don't think that many people were trying to optimize unit composition other than One Proud Bavarian was like really taking a close look at it, and I know that Lathan Redhawk also took a look at it. Mainly because it didn't necessarily matter, but now initiative is going to be good for the entire game, whereas before it would just like really hard fall off. Let's see. Next up, we have that the nobles in Demi demand are now not in excess of, and this was one that I think that people didn't realize, but the Demi demand was also the same as the nobles demand. The demand is not more than their, the amount of money they would get, so they don't demand more goods than income they receive, which was a little bit of a strangeness, but honestly there's like a lot of strangeness, building maintenance, for example. I'm going to talk about this more with, I think, Tarkus on a podcast, but like building maintenance is another free money modifier because 80% of that building maintenance nobody pays for. And then there's a money deletion modifier in that all your slider money just gets punted and nothing, it doesn't get reinvested in the economy in some way. So if you're like Vic 3 brained, there's a lot of money deletion and creation. The AI is generally stronger. The AI was stronger last patch. It seems to be stronger this patch as well. Generally speaking, like 2 patches ago, the AI was just like so feckless in terms of developing the economy that in 200 years it would just double the size of its tax base. Now it can like 20x plus the size of its tax base in a similar amount of time. There seems to be more illustrations on events. This is generally not something I see that much. I focus on that much, so, but there seems to be more. The UI, instead of, so often you get a ton of money, okay? The livestock color here. Often you get a ton of money, and at some point, in order to like build all the stuff you want to build, it's a whole lot of clicking. There's now a mass build kind of clicker in the UI, so what you could do is you could like look at an entire market, or you don't even have to filter by a market, although I like filtering by a market, and you could like look at the RGOs, and you can now like shift click, and it'll expand all the RGOs possible that actually have available employment. So you shift click and you queue like 300 things or something like this, which is very nice in terms of a UI adjustment for people who like to actually manage the economy, and like in terms of click reduction and this type of thing. How are the Ottomans this patch? Are they buffed? They're last patch they like lost their insane control modifier, but this patch with the flat sources of proximity cost. Okay, so like the Ottomans have 25% land proximity cost, which is really a lot. They have the second most proximity cost reduction after Russia, as far as I know. And now that you get another 20% flat, you're from land values and also from itinerant court. And I think there might be another source, so it might be 30%, because I haven't looked through absolutely everything. But now that you get another that, now you're up to like 45%. There's just generic like proximity cost reduction. There's like 10% off the crown. There's another... Here, I have some of this written down in terms of where you're getting the sources. There's 5% from Supreme Court. There's 10%... Here, just 10% from Crown. We already said that. But I think that you could reduce proximity cost over land to 0 as the Ottomans. And also, terrain that impedes proximity cost was just generally speaking nerfed. I haven't checked jungle, so I don't know if jungle has. But like woodlands, forests, I think this was through on last patch too. Woodlands, Forest, Hills, Mountains all reduce proximity cost or increase proximity cost by half what they used to. Can the AI handle multiple trade centers? We'll get to the... well, actually, okay, so AI, regarding trade, there seems to have been a change, or this might have been the case last patch, where the auto calculator doesn't import. Or automation doesn't import now. And my understanding is that this is a performance reason, because everyone would try and import the same thing, a bunch of routes would be created, there wouldn't be enough goods in the market, the routes would be cancelled, and this would repeat iteratively because everyone was trying to get the same good. And so what it does now is, just generally speaking, people only, the automation just only exports. And this makes sense to me from a performance perspective, but obviously that's like a bit of an issue. So I've been talking and giving suggestions. I think generally speaking, if you have any amount of trade advantage in a market, you should try and import from it. Because if you have trade advantage, then your routes can't get canceled by other people because you get priority in that market. And I think if they make that adjustment, things will be... you'll be able to get the performance saving effect while still making it so that imports happen and such. But this is especially important for colonial empires, because a big part of the colonial empire is, if you're in Spain, like, you're using your, like, trade power here, or actually, let's come in here. You're using your trade power here, right, to import from this colonial market. So, because you have a bunch of trade power here, you don't have a bunch of the colonial market, and the trades are really lucrative, and because you have trade advantage in the colonial market, you will get priority there. And so, this is how you hoover up the stuff. If the automation doesn't import stuff, then, like, that's not ideal. And so, yeah. Let's see. Is it getting closer to content creators, to release gameplay? By definition, every moment is closer. Yes. Do you think Paradox will nerf the Mamluks? I don't think the Paradox should nerf the Mamluks. I think the Mamluks are insanely strong. I think that they were insanely strong historically. I think that they were on, like, the crossroads of the world. I think that logistically a lot of this made sense. This was, like, close to the height of, like, Islam in the, like, historically speaking, and, like, I don't think that, I don't think the Mamluks are overpowered. I think that they're incredibly strong. I'm actually doing, like, a tier list for nations. I think Mamluks are pretty high up on it, but I don't think they should necessarily get nerfed. I think maybe what they should have is a disaster, and, like, that would be the adjustment to, like, account for the collapse of this type of thing. But to just kind of continue trying to go through my list for the people on the forums, because I know that they try and summarize stuff. Infamy seems to be way higher. And I don't know exactly what it is, because the tooltip is not that good. But this was in, like, the last patch. Going after the people who are in the war, like, as allies or as this type of thing, is a lot more expensive. And also the... we'll talk about CVs in a second, but also just generally Infamy seems a lot more expensive, and I'm not sure exactly why that is. It's difficult to parse. I'm going to kind of try and keep taking a look at it, but it seems more expensive, and I like this change. It also seems more expensive if you have no rivals. I think you still expand with subject CVs, and you can still do it. Your Parliament CVE is now correctly applying the plus 25% cost instead of a smaller plus 10% cost. And there's a reduction in no CV to, like, plus 50%. But also, there's a few no CV reduction modifiers. I think there's at least minus 20%, and if that minus 20% applies multiplicatively, then you could reduce it to 120% total, or plus 20%, at which point it's less cost than Parliament CV. Which is interesting. I don't know if I like that, but okay. In general, I think I'm fine with Parliament CV actually being strong, or stronger than it is. I'm kind of okay with it being 125% anyways, though. But with the caveat that I like the idea of Parliament being strong in general, and there being trade-offs. And one thing that is kind of a little bit rough is that once you kind of do all your laws in place, there's like less useful things to click with Parliament, other than just increase taxes and CB to some extent. Generally speaking, you can, if you get a lot of antagonism, I mean, this is just something that's just true in general, but with your Diplo being so pressured, it kind of incentivizes you to expand a bit more without subjects, because the subjects pressure you, and this is something that I think doesn't get talked about that much, but a lot of the Diplo interactions are just super overtuned, like ask for money, gives you an enormous amount of money. In order to do that, you have to generate favors, and in order to generate favors up to 25, which is what you need, you either need an insane amount of Diplo rep, or you need to be allies with someone. And so you just get just massive piles of ducats relative to your income. And so I think that that's something I have a little bit of note of that is worth mentioning. But also, if, like... Yeah, okay. We also already talked about shift-click RGOs. We already talked about trade. And the last kind of thing that I wanted to note is this is kind of something that's been possible for a while, but it's becoming more and more obvious. You can just super modifier stack. You get to keep the tech trees of the country that you were previously as you form a new nation. Forming new nations seems relatively flexible. And so, as a consequence, you can just kind of stack tech trees. I think this is really strong. This is something I'm not a huge fan of, because I always thought it was absurd and silly to just try and form crazy other nations to stack it up in EU4. I was a fan of the system they had where it bricked all your previous techs, even though I thought the tech bricking aspect of it was bad. I wish they found a way to make it so that your techs getting bricked wasn't as punishing, but it's like you get refunded the tech juice, the research, or something like this, rather than it just bricking your techs. But also, you can't just stack the techs of multiple nations on top of each other. I'm probably going to do a video for this on some point, so I don't want to just provide a bunch of examples. But this became a lot more obvious to me while playing the Castile run, because I could form... Like, when I swapped to Sunni, I could form Al-Andalus. Al-Andalus didn't have a tech tree, so I wasn't going to do that, because I would have just bricked a bunch of my flavor. But I could have formed Al-Andalus, because I eventually gained control of the entire Iberian Peninsula, which is the requirement. You have to take all the Christians out, and of course I, the Crown of Castile, was the Sultanate of Castile, and so all the Christians were gone. And so the requirements for flipping... a lot of things seem relatively low, and so there are, like, a lot of strong nations that are, like, technically formable. Like, I think that France might be a formable or something, and so you can imagine, like, starting as a country, like a tier 1 country, and then you form France, and then you form, like, Great Britain, and then you have all these tech trees stacked on top of each other. It's not necessarily easy, but it's, like, possible. And it's kind of shenanigans. But, yeah. How much of these do correlate the meaning of victory? Thinking of trade advantage, trade centers, is that the basic concept between the two games? Not really, because trade advantage gives you, like, priority. Like, hard priority. Whereas trade advantage in EU5... trade advantage in EU5 gives you hard priority. Victory gives you, like, soft priority. You just go first, and you get to trade as much as you want. And if you trade away all the goods before anyone else gets to trade the good, they don't get to trade it. The Mamluks already have a disaster. It's called the Ottomans. If the AI Ottomans was, like, a lot more aggressive and snowballed a lot harder, they could maybe fight the Mamluks. The Mamluks are really good. Sounds like proximity needs a minimum cost. Even with a minimum cost, it's still annoying, because then the modifier gets made useless, too. To be fair, it already gets you... The thing about discount modifiers is that you just get increasing marginal returns in terms of the math, and then, eventually, the modifier is useless. You know? And it's just, I think that you shouldn't use these types of modifiers because of how they become more and more valuable the more of them you have. So, they should pay all the content creators for quality testing. I mean, I've done over, I think, 1,000 tickets at this point. I have over 1,000 hours. I think I do over a ticket an hour. So, doesn't it make sense to keep the technology? You can keep the entire tree. Is the even the stuff you haven't researched yet. And the way it used to be is when you would swap, or the way it was initially proposed is that when you swap, your next age tech tree will be the new nation you're on. And then it was, when you swap, it bricks all your old techs, but now you have the new tech tree. And now what it is when you swap, you keep all your old techs, and you get the new techs, even the ones that haven't been researched. Is the Muscovy video you weren't a fan of building the capital to massive pops, but is it a super city worth it to maximize building levels and bonuses? Well, the thing is, your capital just gets super overpopulated, and it's kind of frustrating because you can't actually employ all the peasants because of other restrictions like building cap, and you can't move them out, so they just kind of sit and be useless. Let's like the stream, people. Thank you. The forming tags loop through EU4 was jumping through hoops like in a circus to gain modifiers. Yeah, and so this is kind of... I don't like this idea. I didn't like about EU4. I thought it made EU4 feel silly. But you can only form nations of a tier or higher, right? Yeah, but you stack, like... if you're just like... If the game's like, okay, which 4 nations am I gonna form? Yeah. It felt bad to be locked out, but, like, I don't know. I don't like the silliness. Do you think there will be any way to shift pops around besides slavery and invite settles favors? Feels like there should be some sort of parliament option. I was playing a little bit as Hungary. And Hungary actually gets, like, they have a event that pops, consistently. What they could do is they could put in a state privilege that gives them minus tax, and in reward, they will get a huge amount of immigrants from Germany. And this is a really big number. It's like 1K a month, which Hungary starts out with like 2.8 million, and for them, this is more than their population growth. Eventually, I think since it's like a flat amount, it'll dilute out. It'll be kind of whatever, but it was really, really strong. Danish plus Rus or Oman plus Rus, who has the best C-Tech? Well, Ormuz did, but they got uber gutted. Denmark doesn't have the -1 cost anymore, so they got gutted too. You think only being able to form tags of a higher tier doesn't fix that? I think people are gonna see some silly stuff, is what I'm thinking. I don't want to get too deep into, like, all the things. No one expects the Islamic Inquisition. That's another thing, is it is so much faster to convert pops when you're Muslim than it is the other way around. So, like, the thing is like, your natural expand... I think if you're in Iberia, it makes so much sense to flip Muslim, and this is just going to be the meta. Let's go look at Maghreb real quick. And I think that, look, your natural expand is down here. All these pops are Muslim. You have to have Muslim as your primary religion in order to core all this. So as Spain, you just take a bunch of this, you flip Muslim, and then you can core it all. It's like so simple. And then, because you can't core it otherwise, unless you convert everyone, and the base conversion rate is 2, and you don't get a convert area interaction, so you would have to convert province by province, and even then you convert slowly in low control areas, whereas your homeland is high control, your places are already cores, they don't decore when you religion flip, and so, like, what you do is you work to, like, core the Portuguese and, like, the Aragon and this type of stuff, and then, in terms of, you build this building called the Madrasa. The base conversion rate is 2. And you can get a little bit more from the tech tree, I think, in the Age of Reformations. That's the 4th age. You get a little bit from the, choosing, admin ideas, I think, at Age 3. But the base rate is 2 pops. And then your modifiers go in. The Madrasa adds +10 to that. So they convert 6 times faster before you start getting other flat sources. And to be fair, the other flat sources eventually kind of drown out the madrasa, but the Sunni are way better at converting anyways. And so it makes more sense to, in terms of maximize your coring potential, you should flip Muslim as an Iberian. And it's way easier to do it as the Portuguese than the Castilians. And so this is what we did in our run. Which will kind of clear out some of these questions, and then we'll maybe talk about the run if we can get through it. France and GB are both tier 3, though? Yeah, but... or I don't know if France is tier 3. Great Britain is. By that time, you had already won if you control all the land. I mean, you could look at it like that, too. 1K hours is 50 weeks, a year worth of 9 to 5 testing. Man could have made quite a buck. I mean, I'm open to the idea that they throw me a bone. I canceled my pre-order via Steam and pre-ordered with Paradox for your code. Thank you so very much. I do appreciate it. Financially speaking, people using the pre-order codes, like, actually, like, made by year. It's, relatively to what I get from, like, YouTube ad revenue, it's, like, so much money. Wait, I just did, I flipped, as Castile, I flipped Sunni. That's why I dislike discount modifiers. Always do add percentage, that way it's diminishing returns and not multiplicative. Absolutely, it's, yeah. How do you reward formables then? Well, the rewards for formables just generally seem kind of low. Like, Great Britain's not a lot of extra tech on top of England, but England's a lot of tech. And this might just be a UI thing where they're not fully showing all the Great Britain tech that you get. But some of there's also huge discrepancies between power levels between, like, different tiers and the countries in those tiers and this type of stuff. But, like, a lot of stuff is just, like, relatively muted, like, and I was feeling like they were trying to have the formable's power level be relatively muted, and instead the power kind of just be on your base thing, and then, like, with some exceptions, like Prussia giving a whole bunch of stuff. But now, like, England forming Great Britain as England doesn't really give you that much more than you already have as England. But now it's, like, doing this craziness. How bad is fort maintenance? Not so bad. I mean, I still think you delete all the forts. The fort maintenance, the thing is like, when you're trying to spin it up, initially, the forts are really expensive, and then after that, they're just kind of irrelevant and it's whatever. I don't think you get a chance to getting institutions through subjects, or change getting institutions through subjects. I think that's fine from a simulation perspective. Is overpopulation a mechanic, meaning having too many pops in an area, not enough housing? Yes, it's a mechanic. Your pop growth stops entirely, and you get a bunch of negative migration attraction, and you get pop demotion speed, so it's kind of bad. How's Japan right now? Japan right now, the situation doesn't seem fully functional. That's why, just in general, even though I just did a bunch of stuff talking about balance, this type of stuff, I want them to focus on the situations. I think balance is fine enough. I think people are not gonna... I think your first 300 hours, you're not gonna have a huge complaint about balance. So I would rather the focus really be on the HRE and Japan, I think, in terms of getting those things that are maybe not working exactly how they should fixed. How big is the swap between countries? I feel if my pop is 5 million, the idea of culture swapping to get a formable seems real hard. It's kind of not as hard as it looks, but I don't want to give examples without, like, spoiling some stuff that I'm going to be doing. And I haven't checked a lot of the other tags other than ones I have plans for runs. How easy to flip religions? It's kind of hard. Cringe? Oof. How you need 40% of your pop to be that religion, but, I mean, we could talk about it a little bit. We just conquered a bunch in North Africa and didn't use any Castilian, or didn't conquer anything that was Catholic. And then we gave a little bit of lands to our subjects, and then once we hit a critical mass, we flipped Sunni, and then we immediately just released a bunch of vassals and fed subjects lands in North Africa because we didn't actually want to hold it. And so we were like 25 or 30% or something like this. Why didn't Spain just convert IRL? They converted, but it meant a different thing the way they did it. Which four nations will I turn into this run? Sounds like a better version of Civ 7. That's maybe fair. I just, like, I would prefer something more grounded. The design, reading the Tintos, like, the design intent seemed for forming a bunch of formables to not be what you were gonna do. The Unconquista. Foxat, thank you for the 5 Canadian. I pre-order before loading that YouTube code, so here's my tip. Thank you so very much. Much appreciated, my guy. What does Catholic have that makes it less desirable? They kind of have a worse tech tree in general. They don't have access, relative to, like, Sunni, they don't have access to the dhimmi, which generally are a little bit more taxable, and so you generate more income. You can't tax your clergy. There's, like, a lot of things going on. I could maybe make a list, but, like, Sunni just seems so much better. You played more EU5 than I played EU4? It do be like that sometimes. I'm close to playing more EU5 than I've played EU4. I think swapping culture religion should always be a disaster. Yeah, I'd be fine with that. I think Johan might want to restore Al-Andalus in Catalonia. I'm making a spreadsheet about pop growth. What are the numbers of pops you need for a town and city? That was just changed. It used to be 50,000. Now it's, I think, down to 30,000. It might be 25,000. I'm not sure the exact number. The number you need for a town is 5,000. But that is another change. Is that cities are way easier. And that might seem like a really small change, but that's actually really nice for Europe. They're also way cheaper in terms of cost, which is nice for the East. But Europe was having a hard time forming cities before, like, the 1500s, just because the Black Plague rolls in and you just don't have enough population density in general. And so, like, I think we have notes of, like, when we make our first city in, like, the Castile run, and I think it's, like, the late 1400s. In Emperor losing a big province to our occupation was horrible. It damaged a lot of your pops. You get a pretty big dip on prosperity. If you have a lot of prosperity generation, it's kind of okay. Does the EU5 have the same issue where certain countries just dominate certain aspects because of their unique content? I think that the Ottomans are going to be very, very strong. I think the Ottomans now are just looking really insane in terms of their content. I think that your geographical situation, I think, is actually really important. I think your number of pops you have is really important. And I think your resources are really important. And the Ottomans, they have a pretty good geographical situation. They have decent resources, they have pretty solid resources, but they don't have a lot of pops. And so, I don't know, like, in the abstract if they're just hyper-powerful. But I think that their bonuses are probably the best in the game overall. It's tough. The Merchant Republic bonuses are just super cracked out, though. So you could make an argument that, like, Venice has the best, but I don't know. Do they need to fix Border Gore in the last patch? I honestly, Border Gore doesn't mind, I don't mind it that much, so, like, I don't think I notice it often enough to, like, answer the question properly. Hey, Trash Waifu, thank you for the donut. Thank you for the $5. Or $4.99. What I mean is, should you feel, why should you be Catholic besides roleplay? I think, like, a lot of your events as Castile should probably be gated behind being Catholic, maybe. I feel like that's a huge oversight, to be honest. Thank you for, thank you, and well for everything, for it. I'm gonna have a stroke. For everything. Thank you and well for everything. Thank you so very much. Yeah, I think that, I was thinking of this when I was forming Sunni. I was like, I wonder how much content I'm going to brick by being Sunni. And I also think, I'm curious how much I, like, should brick. To be fair, I couldn't form Spain anymore. I could only form Al-Andalus. Can Sunni Castiles enslave Christians? Yeah, they can, baby. Oh, yeah. So, like, a big part of the value here is that you need a lot of slaves. And you also can run plantations because because Maghreb is in a different continent, you can run plantations here. And I really do like these, like, continental, like, these areas of continental, like, separation. So you get one, like, in Anatolia between, like, the Ottomans and Byzantines. You get one here with Iberia, between Iberia and North Africa. And you get one in Egypt between Asia and Africa. But what's really critical here is that the cotton and sugar you can run plantations for. There's also more sugar. There's like a sugar here. There's a sugar here. And there's also some really good resources down here. Gold, silver. I think there's one more premium. Maybe not. But you could just make a ton of plantations here. And these are in areas where you have like way more pops and this type of stuff. And you're going to have way more development. And so you're going to have much higher plantation levels. So you just get an enormous amount of sugar and cotton. And it feels really, really nice. Also, what we did is, we can maybe talk about it a little bit. We moved the trade capital from Fez down to Marrakesh, which I think is a better location for the trade capital anyways. But this made the Sevilla market bigger and big enough to have the cotton in it. And so we could just produce enormous amounts of cotton, which made our textile industry much better, like courtesy of the slaves. Which, like, plantations are just a super cracked building. I wonder if there's a Tinto building for it, but there's not. It gives plus 10% output. So if you have 30 plantations, all your plantations make 300% more cotton, and all your RGOs make 300% more cotton. Yeah. Why does my stuff always get mixed around? Bro got that warlord build. Thank you. How are you going to become? How easily can you become? I don't know how to swap to a merchant republic other than just starting as one, which like means like maybe you're supposed to start as Venice and then form France if you want to play France because merchant republics are so cracked. That sounds like a bit of a task. I don't even know if France is a formula, but thank you as well for everything. Super YouTube autocorrect. That is a crazy autocorrect. What are your thoughts on Novgorod? They seem pretty good. They seem like a better tag for forming Russia. I don't know if they get... Some of their unique stuff seems better than Muscovy, but I don't know what happens... I don't know how much overlap there is between Russia stuff and Muscovy stuff, where you get the Muscovy stuff anyways from Russia, and it's better to start as Novgorod. But Novgorod is a republic, and I think they're a merchant republic, and those bonuses are insane. So I think it might be better to form as Novgorod, yeah. Do you get the Mamluk barracks as Sunni Spain? You do not. You do not. You get the Mamluk barracks as far as I can tell, the Mamluks and Delhi only. And then the Ottomans, you get a Janissary barracks, which is roughly analogous. Do you recommend the base game or the premium edition? It depends on how locked in you are on getting the DLC. It is a discount on the DLC, but it's also, like, if you're getting DLC day one, and you know you're going to do this, and you're really confident, then it is a 20% discount, so then you would want to get premium. But if you don't know if you want to do that, then don't necessarily get it. Have you played the New World yet? Not really. If you accept a culture, do you get anything from the special units or advances? No. Any runs with Ethiopia? Yes, we did an Ethiopia run. Ethiopia was a bit of fun. They kind of feel a little bit like Mali, where like the Sahara really separates you off from everything kind of north of it. Not as abruptly in Ethiopia's case because of the Nile River, but it really feels like you're a bit separated. You have really good resources. You're kind of pushing in Africa, and I think with the changes towards... Look, I think Ethiopia gets a proximity cost reduction, and you now have 20% more or 30% more proximity cost reduction, such that pushing over land is really good, and Ethiopia might just be highly playable. Like, I think Mali really benefits from this as well. Since you have 1,000 hours now, what's your go-to nation to play? Like, the one you have the most fun playing? Probably. I really enjoyed playing Mali. I've played Mali several times. And a lot of other countries I haven't played multiple times. Any thoughts on starting as Denmark? Well, Denmark was super nerfed. Denmark had one of the best advances in the game, and now they don't. But also, anything that was giving flat naval proximity was kind of a little bit silly. We have... kind of some notes. We planned on doing maybe a short AAR, but we're maybe going to just kind of discuss it in terms of what we did with Castile. And focus a little bit on Castile here. Starting things off, the capital, or the trade capital, is in Badajoz or something like this, and the actual capital is in Vala something. Yeah, we can maybe find the locations. Vala Dolid or something here. So Burgos and here, we moved the capital, like first thing, we moved this trade capital to here, which kind of eats into the Sevilla market a lot. I'm not sure exactly if this would be the target. Maybe we should have done a few locations north. But then maybe Burgos is kind of like an okay location. We didn't like how much it ate into the Sevilla market. But generally speaking, Spain starts, or Castile starts, with this really kind of annoying situation in that, like half their, 3/4 of their pop are in the north, but you kind of want to have your capital and your stuff in the south, and there's not really a good way to get the pops from the north to the south. And so you have this awkward, weird tension as a result of this, that is a little bit uncomfortable. But okay, Novgorod is too big for my liking, not going to play any major tags, seems damn boring. They don't have that many locations relative to their size. The locations are huge. Do all the mountains not destroy Ethiopia control? They do, but maybe we can find Horn of Africa. They do, but like, if you have enough reductions, you can kind of go around the mountains. But like, the thing is, there's a ton of good resources out here. So if you post up your capital here, you have access to all this. And this is kind of how we played when we played Ethiopia. But if you have enough reduction, you just go around the mountains. Why go around the mountains when we could go under them? Because there's Balrogs in the mountain. Stupid Ginley. Any cool gameplay on being wide horde? I haven't done the Timurids. Generalist and short do not belong in the same sentence. Oof. Thoughts on Castile no longer having gold RGO? I think it's probably fine. How many unique texts does do you think a normal country with content has, like Hungary? Well, Hungary I think has like 11 or 14 or somewhere in that neighborhood. Why do you want the capital in the south? Well, we have the knowledge that our natural expand is going to be in Maghreb, and we also know that we want to move the capital to Sevilla because it's kind of the best location as it relates to pushing navally, and we want the capital in Maghreb, and we eventually want to even push into Mali, and this is kind of a good location for doing that. But when you're here, you just like kind of just reach across the strait and you're into Maghreb. And we know we're going to grab a bunch of this territory. We know we're going to be able to core it easy because it's going to be Sunni. And we're planning on flipping Sunni. And so, yeah. Is there no good way to encourage migration to a specific region? Not really, unless it's colonial. Are colonies worth time investment? They're worth it, but like they're not like... They take a long time to pay off, and they're a really strong money sink, and you generate a lot of money, so eventually it's a way to convert money into manpower and resources and stuff like this. Do you think the Verona's an alright capital for a good playthrough? It's your hometown? It's probably okay. I would probably choose the other side of Italy. If the bug on terms of incoming harbor capacity actually matters, harbor capacity is going to be extremely important. And this is maybe a point of emphasis for people on the forums, that harbor capacity is going to be important if that bug gets fixed, because you're going to be connecting like harbor capacity hubs. And so specifically you're going to want a place with a lot of harbor capacity. I don't know if there's a harbor capacity thing in here in terms of the mega thread so that I could show off. We also did play a bit as Hungary. I remember when the game was first given to creators to talk about a lot of performance issues. Performance is massively improved. We've had a couple crash to desktops recently, though. So we'll see how that gets sorted out. Can you already tell me can you already tell us when we can see gameplay? No, I can't. What are thoughts about pirates? I thought you were talking about pirating for a second. We haven't looked too closely at pirates. It seems like they get some really strong bonuses, but like the cost of playing a pirate is kind of high. So, does Castile have events for merging with Aragon? The events regarding like personal unions and like completely gaining control of a country, just in general, are a lot more flavor-oriented than actually just, like, full annexing someone really easy. And generally, they're a lot more muted in terms of power level. And, like, this is kind of what I was talking about with, like, the modifier stacking. Like, the modifier stacking doesn't feel muted in the same way. And this, like, the events just generally seem a lot more grounded. Like, you use the game's mechanics to, like, annex Aragon, basically. And there's, like, some stuff to encourage the marriages, but then you get a normal PU and you do the normal PU stuff, and you annex them that way, which takes forever, but, like, it's not infamy generating. Or it generates a little bit of infamy. Or, sorry, antagonism. And the same thing with, like, Austria and Hungary. How good's the new patch? It's good, it's good. We're enjoying it. Poland has 14 unique texts. When does your NDA end? Is it on the day, or you don't allowed to say? Are we allowed to say? I'm not sure, so I'm not going to say. Johan cosplay when? We do have the wig, but that wig is supposed to be a Guy Fieri wig. People have thought it was Johan. Do you think Constantinople is good capital for control? Yeah, it's really good for pushing naval, but because now there's so much land procs that you could get, maybe you're supposed to go land as Ottomans. Are they a good resource for plantations in Arabia? For Ethiopia into Arabia? You eventually can move a lot of good resources. I don't know if you can move it to Arabia through Columbian exchange. Arabia is like mostly desert. Desert kind of sucks ass. I think it's probably not worth, like, moving the capital of the coast as Ethiopia just to, like, gain control of the desert. Yeah. So you plan the capital is at the center of the empire? Generally speaking, yeah. And so this is a big part of why we wanted to move the capital to Sevilla here, because we were planning... Oops. We were planning on really having the entirety of Maghreb, which we eventually did get. What does harbor capacity give? Well, it gives reduced proximity cost when embarking, and it's supposed to give it when disembarking, but right now it, like, doesn't work that way. But if it does work that way, then where you disembark to will be really important. And, like, to talk about, like, Castile, for example, we will embark from, like, Sevilla, and then it's not the case that we can go dink, 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 push control to the entire coastline. Instead, we would push control really strongly to Lisboa, and then it would come in through land here and a lot of control, or push up to here, because this is where there's a really good, harbor capacity location, and then we push control kind of inland here, and I think there's, like, another one up here, but the idea is that there would be, like, hubs, rather than just getting the entire coastline nailed. If, like, the disembark cost is, like, 15 or something, after, like, modifiers, then it would be faster to disembark here and then go by land. Do you know why they don't let YouTubers show in-game images? Because they have a plan. They have a plan regarding rollout and hype, and the plan doesn't involve shooting your load early. You know what I mean? Maybe you don't know what I mean. But, like, if you slowly want to ratchet up the stuff that you're releasing, right? And if the grand reveal is gameplay and, like, big runs in, like, streams and stuff of this nature, you don't want to do that, like, a month before. Because that's, like, early, if that makes sense. Or more than a month before. And people are so conspiratorial about this, but it's like, it's just like a hype, like, it's a marketing / hype thing. Like, it's okay, there's, like, here's the thing. There's, like, 4 different teams, right, in Paradox. There's, like, the influencer team, there's the community manager team, there's the marketing team, there's the development team. They all have different people. Like, there's actually people there who have different motivations and different roles within the company and different goals and stuff like this. And people look at like Paradox in this completely monolithic way that it's just one singular entity that has like a corporate brain or whatever. But there's like people in here and like this type of stuff. Okay, the people who, I don't know the inner workings of how it works exactly, but my guess would be the people who decide when information can be put out is probably marketing. And marketing, their entire goal, the only thing they care about is maximizing hype on release. So they don't want to maximize hype a week before release, and they don't want to maximize hype a week after release, right? They want to maximize it on release. And the sequencing and the pacing at which you put out stuff matters for that, right? There's more teams that are like independent doing their own thing, but just thinking of it from that perspective might make it a little easier to understand why, like, rather than like, oh, they're hiding the game from us, it's no, you have a tool. The tool is gameplay reveal, right, of a newer build and this type of stuff, and you don't want to use that tool too early, because what it's going to do is it's going to bump up hype, and then it's going to drop. Like, hype, whatever you do to increase hype, it's going to start dropping afterwards. And so what you want to do is you want to go, like, bump, 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 and then you're at the top, you're at the peak, you're at the apex. And you want that apex to be released, not a week before release. Right? Because people are going to buy the game when they can play it, not just pre-order it, and so they want to be able to have people be able to play it when they, like, maximize hype. First time catching you live. Hey, Connor. Happy to be here. When would you release Toulouse as France, since you can't propagate control down to the south? Yes. I released about 20% of my starting territory when I did a France run to help with crown control. Crown power. There's actually a lot of stuff you can do with crown power to help it out early game. You can assign cabinet ministers, you can put your, like, ruler in the navy, like, there's a few tools that you have to kind of juice it up, and if you use all those tools, it makes playing these really big countries that have really kind of low control in a lot of their locations, of which Spain is one of them, a lot easier. In what ways is Vic 3's economy more complex, deep than EU5? Well, I'd say it's less complex, but more deep, and unpacking that takes a little bit of time. And probably going to be a podcast topic, but there's, to put it like this, like locations matter and infrastructure matters. There's more things in EU5, but the things that Vic 3 is doing, it does it with a lot more depth and grounding than EU5. England's capital of London is one of the best capitals in the world, so you don't want to do it. Every time you hear generalist speaking, I hear in my head generalist speaking. That's crazy. Can you imagine someone saying generalist speaking, like, just periodically throughout, like, when them saying something, they just refer to themselves, Mike speaking. The amount of AARs I have, and the given amount of time is, the amount of AARs and the like have given most of the real info of the meat of the game. I'm not sure what you mean. I'm honestly still really pleased that we're getting the game this year. Yeah, is Ethiopia able to flip Jewish easily like an EU4? Well, you can push religions that aren't your own if you're willing to use cabinet actions. So if you start out with relatively low population, it's kind of easy to flip to population flip. Everyone's going to want to go itinerant court now anyways, which allows you to move around your capital. And so what you could do is, like, if your capital is over here, you convert this area, and then your ruler dies and your capital moves over here. And then you convert this area, because you convert much better in areas with high control, and then your ruler dies and maybe you move your capital over here, and then enough of this is like the right religion, and then you just religion flip. Have you played Majapahit? Very briefly, not a whole lot. You need to do a bunch of different markets as Majapahit. It's kind of a little bit annoying because market access doesn't propagate very well over the ocean, so you have to do individual oceans basically. They were great games. They got sunk because they were released early in bad or buggy state. Which games? I didn't think that the game would come out till next year. I really wish Vic 3 would allow you to push religions that aren't yours and convert when you're at 40%. Yeah, Vic 3, there's no conversion. Vic 3, just generally speaking, they like to have really a lot of depth to their systems. But they, like, also don't have a lot of systems. Like, it's really a depth thing, and EU5 is, like, very much a breadth thing. Like, there's, like, everything in EU5. But, okay, so continuing on, talking about what we did with our Castile run. Pretty early on, we subjugate Granada. We get an admin system law that gives minus 10% proximity. So Castile is one of these countries with minus proximity cost, just naturally. And just generally speaking, these countries tend to be really strong, and so you're going to have it. We also have a law, Mesta Council, which is its own law category, which gives 2.5 to 5% tax efficiency, depending on which version of the law you have. That might even be shown in here, in the Tinto flavor for this. You can see they're showing off a ton of the flavor here. There is the unique government reform for Castillo. This is actually an incredibly nice one, the Caballeros Villanos, because generally speaking, what throttles you on peasant tax in a lot of situations is having enough satisfaction, and this is just like plus satisfaction, so it's really, really nice. Is trade range better over water, generally speaking? Or is delayed institutions not a problem for Russia but not India? It's a problem for... If you are on the east coast of India, it's a problem. If you're on the west coast of India, it's less of a problem. So there's really kind of this bifurcation in terms of power level. And this is one of the reasons why I think Vijayanagar is a lot stronger than Orissa. I would imagine EU5 has a bigger budget than Vic 3. But okay, let's see if we can find some of these in here. We do see some of the unique texts. Are we going to see some of the unique laws? I guess not. We don't see the Mesta Council, which is kind of... There we go. This is the one we're talking about. Eventually you get it for plus 5%, and you get, like, plus 50% wool output, which is really kind of a nice modifier, but it makes all your farms more expensive, which includes stuff that's not wool. But you look here, there's a ton of wool all over the place. Really, really nice, giving you a lot of stuff for fabrics before you end up getting the plantations and the cotton. So that does feel pretty good. In 1341, we deck Morocco, and we take a bunch of stuff off Morocco. In particular, it's really, really important to grab... Here, let's get the location map mode. I think it's this bottom one, Tarifa. It's either Tarifa or... Oh, this map's not even fully updated because I think there's a couple more locations here. But there's one here that has the sound toll, which I think is pretty important to grab. One of these locations has control over the access to the Strait of Gibraltar, so that'll be good. I remember hearing that rebels were kind of nothing burgers. Has that been fixed? They're still kind of nothing burgers for the player. Like for the AI, so generally speaking, the way that rebels actually get really annoying is if someone big, like an enemy of yours, like goes after you while you're having a rebels. And they are more likely to do that because they care about the amount of power you have, and if your manpower is suddenly cut in half because you're having a rebellion, they'll say, oh, you're weaker than I thought, and then they'll go for you. And that could be really nasty. And that has happened to us a non-zero amount of times. And also, there's like an asymmetric, an asymmetry there where they could enforce stuff on you, but you can't enforce stuff on there, and I don't like that at all. I don't like that asymmetry. But, that's kind of the only situation where revs are really painful, because the rev doesn't start out with as much control as they should, so they can't raise as many conscripts. They try and hire mercenaries if they have money. They'll take loans, they'll hire mercs, but you can hire more mercs than they can, and you have the entire standing army. So, generally speaking, they are going to be kind of on the weaker side. As things go, but we deck Morocco. I think we leave at least one location here to be the war goal in a later war. That way it's easier to enforce on Morocco because we just take the stuff in Iberia, and there's not much they can do to stop us, so we could get ticking war score. Just as kind of like a mini idiosyncrasy type of thing. But yeah, Lady Saffron said it was really tough to fight Morocco because of the malaria and attrition. Yeah, you can lose a lot of guys fighting Morocco. You kind of want to some extent be in and out. And a lot of this Spain run or Castile run we did, like on kind of the newer patch. We built villages in our RGOs. Quite a few, especially our critical RGOs, like the silver down here and the silver here, in preparation for the plague, because villages give additional labor potentials, but don't actually employ the laborers. And so if you have 2,000 laborers in a location, they're all working the silver mine, Black Plague comes through, kills half of them, now you don't have people working the silver mines. But if you had extra potentials, and you instead have 2,200, when you kill half the laborers working there, you'll have 1,100 employed. So villages are slightly more useful or valuable to insulate the RGOs before the plague rolls in. Are you going to do a new video about the military? We're eventually going to do a video about the military. I don't want to do it before I can show stuff. You know what I mean? How viable is Granada? Depends how aggressive the Castile AI is going to be, because they have a lot of levies. I don't think you can just, like, outfight them or micro them in, like, any sort of way. Like, they're so much bigger than you. So, like, if they deck on you in the first, like, 20 years, you're just going to get wrecked. I don't... Maybe you can try and generate enough money to, like, merc up and like do this, but the thing is like levies refill really quickly, so you're gonna merc up, you're gonna win the first war, and then your mercs are depleted, or the first few battles, and then the mercs are depleted, and then they just reconscript the levies. Maybe you can try and get enough money to do it. Like mercenaries are a lot stronger than I think content creators generally think they are, because they haven't really need to use them. Mercenaries are really strong for turning the balance. And a lot of wars that look like they're not winnable, you can just merc up super hard. But the thing is close to the beginning of the game, when Castile's got a deck on you, you don't have a big enough economy to do this. 1k hours already? Yeah, about 1050. How devastating is it to lose levy stacks? Well, losing a bunch of pop is, like, no good. But, like, in terms of winning the war, it's not that important. How does it work with institutions of the Far East? Is it possible to embrace a renaissance before you research all the available technologies at the start of the game as Korea and Japan? No. You are going to get tech bricked as Korea and Japan. And I think this is a substantive point of difference in terms of evaluating the power level of the Western Indians versus anyone who's further east of them. You sell Condottieri a lot? No, the UI for that's kind of weird. I kind of tried doing it once, and then I was like, I don't like any of this. You should maybe take a closer look at it. Is it a good idea to make my own market as Granada? Maybe. Probably. It might make more sense to beat someone else and steal their market. I really don't like overcrowding markets, but it's probably better. How easily can you get into Mali market as Portugal? Pretty easy. Probably really difficult to do it against a Mali player in PvP though, because the malaria is a little bit annoying. But if you recruit the troops and you train the troops in Maghreb, then they will have malaria resistance. So, yeah, maybe we should keep that a secret if we're planning on playing like Mali. But they'll have malaria resistance, and so you're probably supposed to get a core chunk of provinces in Maghreb, and then recruit the troops out of there, and then go and march through all this and fight Mali. Is probably the best way to fight Mali. Against a human opponent. So, okay. We also, a little bit later, ally Aragon. Because we want to generate favors on them, and then use those favors to accept their culture easier. Did you play as East Frisia at all? We took a look at him, we didn't really play him. I've only played CK3 and Victoria 3, I'm excited for EU5, but I don't know, it'll be quite a bit different than those games. Yeah. How do you think it'll would be to take Italy without playing super optimally? How long without playing super optimally? I don't know. Maybe 1700, 1750. That's hard to say, because you're asking me if I do it badly, how well can I do it? And it's like, well, how badly? Okay. We also get a PU over Portugal, because we're royal marrying quite a bit. How is a pop loss from military casualties determined? If a levy regiment's wiped, are the deaths directly from the specific parts of the province they were raised in? Yes. When you raise levies, it pulls the pops out of the locations, and when you expand them, it returns them. So any pops that die don't get returned. Do you know how many locations East Frisia is? No, but it's not a lot. How's the late game performance in the new patch? We haven't gone super late, but like generally speaking, the game starts to get a little bit choppy in the mid 1500s, so like 200 years in. Is buying out locations possible? Generally, they don't like selling locations. They have to be in really dire economic straits, and then they don't care probably as much as they should. But we haven't seen the AI. We haven't seen the AI be willing to sell provinces when we've looked anytime recently. So that's kind of old AI we're thinking of. When are you upgrading your new CPU? It's in the new rig right now. We have new rig. I would show it, but my room's a mess. Otherwise, I would, kind of show you, turn the webcam. So, Aragon starts fighting in North Africa, and here our note is we deck on Aragon in 1376. So I guess we didn't, that ally didn't last too long. Oh, sorry, in 1369 we get professional army, just in terms of pacing. We at some point in time broke our alliance with Aragon, fair enough, and they're fighting in North Africa, so all of their troops are over in Maghreb, right? So their troops are over here. And so we deck on Aragon. We get a really fast war on Aragon. We mainly just siege down the war goal and beat their armies a couple times. Don't get very much war score. Fast peace out pretty quick. And then before their war with Morocco is done, we deck on Morocco. So they're doing all the fighting each other, and we just deck on one and then deck on the other. And so we grab both Fez and Marrakesh. So that we could move the capital, the trade capital. So the trade capital is up here in like Fez, and Marrakesh is down here. We grab both locations so that we can move the trade capital from here to here, which expands the Sevilla market into like all of this like northern amount right here. And Marrakesh is also just the way I look at it, Marrakesh is actually just a really good location for a market capital anyways, because there's this big clearing here, and so you're just going to heavily urbanize this clearing. And okay, there's a river that runs through here, and there's some farmlands here. But it's like, it's fine enough in terms of location. And I do, since we kind of ate into the size of the Sevilla market, when we moved the Badajoz market down to the capital here, because of this, I kind of want to expand the Sevilla market, because the Sevilla market's eventually going to be our primary market, so... I do want it to be a little bit, bigger, this type of thing. Do countries like Bulgaria or Granada that would historically get conquered have unique content? Yeah, there's unique content. Al-Andalus doesn't have any unique content on it, though. I was shocked. There's not even one unique tech for Al-Andalus. So... Is colonizing more fun than EU4? I don't remember what EU4 was like. I'm really bad at EU4 comparisons because I haven't played it in, like, half a decade. But okay. We then fight Aragon again. We get Sedina subjugation and move market to Tortosa. So I think that is, we are peeling stuff off of, layers off of Aragon, and specifically we move the Aragonese market capital from here to here, and we take that location. And so just come in here. It is in Barcelona. We move it to Tortosa because there's a river that goes through here, and the estuary or is it estuary? Is that the right word? The outlet of a river is generally a really good place for a market capital, just in terms of propagating that market really well. And so we move it to Tortosa, which incidentally eats into both the markets over here. I think that's fine, because in general, I think it's going to increase market access eventually. But we do that there, and then we like release Catalonia and give them Barcelona. So, and then we hold on to Tortosa because it's the market capital, and we're just going to have a lot of trade capacity there, and so that's going to be nice. EU4 colonization is clicking a button and then pulling your hair out over the rebels. Well, it's not. There's no like rebels that are just like annoying to micromanage, and you have to march armies over there or anything like that. So, how much unique content is in their game already? A ton. I would advise you look up Zlewik's video on YouTube where he does the comparison of content, unique content between EU5 and EU4. Can you show the Balkans? What's the status there? I would want to ask a more specific question regarding the Balkans. Yeah, that's an estuary. Perfect. So, because I don't know what you want me to show you, and I'm not just gonna show the entire Balkans, like everything about them, or something like this. Okay. In 1388, we fight Morocco and we start annexing Fez. So we eventually divide Morocco into kind of 3 sections, and kind of have some difficulty just overall, like. Regarding how we are handling Morocco, the dev map mode is also maybe worth looking at. Tunis is actually quite a strong start. They do quite well, like in terms of being very, very playable. North Africa doesn't feel just like a meme, which I kind of think that they felt like in previous versions. But we have Fez at the north, Marrakesh in the middle, and in the south we have Sousse. So we start annexing Fez, which is in the north. In 1398, our ruler dies, and we move the capital to Sevilla. So they're our second ruler. We have itinerant court, which allows us to move the capital. In 1399, we embrace banking. We were a little bit lazy on spread. You can probably get it faster than 1399. And in 1405, we annex Granada. But we can't core Granada until we flip Sunni. Even though I think we accept the Andalusi pops, I really am not a fan of this requirement in terms of religion. I think you should be able to religious tolerance your way out of this requirement, but currently you can't. Can you please show the Canadian flavor now? Can you be more specific? What flavor does Canada have other than maple syrup? New trade system also already makes colonization infinitely more engaging. Yeah, I mean, I think PvP, it's going to be really interesting. The AI doesn't really fight you over the colonies all that well. They just colonize the shit out of Africa right now. So, are rivers navigable? No. Tunis Carthage release stream, let's go. We have plans for a way to play Carthage, yeah. We have plans for Carthage. In 1412, we embrace the Renaissance. When we feed the remaining amounts of Morocco to Marrakesh. So Marrakesh is like in the south. Although they don't annex Morocco in time, so eventually we have to annex Marrakesh, release Morocco, and then annex Morocco. In 1424, we do cap eco swap. Capital economy swap? Oh, we start swapping onto capital economy in terms of values. So, moving from traditional economy to capital economy, which is more RGO-based to more production-based, we've like hit a critical mass of production buildings that they are starting to become more valuable overall than our RGOs. So, I guess I could check if Canada has any flavor, but I'm lazy. You play Americas at all? I haven't played the Americas at all. I know it's plans chat, but I can't spoil. You better not spoil. You better not spoil. Lukewarm, double flavor? Double bubble. In 1433, we start fighting Tunis. So we're going to fight over all of North Africa, but we start fighting Tunis here. We do a really fast war, though. We beat them just a little bit, and we just look to get 2 things from them. We don't even take, at this point, Tunisia, because this would require us occupying the capital. Instead, we cut off the Tlemcen capital by taking stuff from Tunis and Tlemcen. I forget exactly where the capital is, but if they have less, if their capital's cut off, they'll have less control given to the rest of the locations, so they'll be a little bit cheaper to take later. And then we grab one little location from here for a releasable that will allow us to deck on Tunis again later. In 1437, we go admin group ideas. Or the idea here is admin group ideas has the conversion, plus 10 conversion. And we said earlier, You get +2 conversion, just base rate, so +10 is a whole lot. But eventually, when we flip Sunni from the madrasa, we'll get an additional +10. But we're setting up by going admin group ideas in 1437. Sevilla spawns the printing press, and we start pushing at this point plutocratic. We slot in plutocratic ethos, which is a government reform that's not very good. But we do it so that we can get a plutocratic trend, so that we can get off aristocracy at this point. Looks like we kind of did stuff in the wrong order. In 1446, we take Tunis, though. Or we take the location of Tunis. So now we're gaining control over their market. So we're controlling the outgoing goods basically from all of North Africa at this point in time. Blink in Morse code, what he's planning? No. How difficult, easy is it to get institution while playing on an Indian subcontinent? It's easier if it's easy as VJ, it's hard as Orissa. Can someone like Austria or the Mamluks colonize the New World without conquering Spain, North Africa? They can, but they can't get the value because they'll have to pay the sound toll. So you'll either have to pay the sound toll to Castile. The trade has to come through here. You have to pay the sound toll or you have to conquer the area. Institutions spawn in India sometimes? Yeah, but you get, like, the first wave of institutions is the most important because it takes the longest to spread, and none of those can spawn in India. So, the resource production commerce looks similar to Vic 3. Well, they do use dynamic prices. But now, at this point in time, in 1446, we have most of Maghreb taken. Like, over 50%. In 1448, we embrace the printing press. And in 49, Tlemcen entirely falls. We start annexing Marrakesh, which is, kind of this middling portion here. And then at this point in time, we are 21% Sunni. We have to get to 40% to flip. How strong would you say naval countries such as England are at propagating control after the naval proximity nerfs? They're still in good shape. They're just not super insane. I think England specifically is like the prototypical, like, best at it in terms of the amount of value they get, so they're really good. But a lot of countries that aren't, like, set up for naval, that maybe would have wanted to go naval before, now you just shouldn't go, like, naval orientation. Who is the toll if Gibraltar is split by two countries? There's one location that determines the sound toll, so it's about owning that location. And that location is in the north. It's up here. I saw a picture of Dev's India economy, and it had a tax base of 40k in the mid-1700s. Yeah. Yep. I mean, in, like, the 1500s, in this Castile run, we had a tax base of, like, 4 or 5k. So, and considering the growth is... That seems very reasonable. Vic 3 is 2 gigachad for that? Yeah. We annex Fez, and we release, Morocco. Because Morocco, we've declared on too many times. You get minus 100 relations every time you deck on someone, and it decays at 2 a year. So, if you've decked on Morocco 4 or 5 times, you're never ever going to annex them diplomatically. So, even though they're a subject, we release them. And in 1454, we are 29% Sunni. We annex, Moron? I'm not sure exactly where they are. I think they're maybe in here somewhere. And now we're 32% Sunni. We fight Tunis, and we start taking big antagonism hits. 200 antagonism. And we're just looking to take big chunks because we're getting close to the Sunni stuff. So we're taking more land than we actually want to hold. We want to release subjects. We want to give territory to subjects. But at this point, we're 35% Sunni. We fight Zab and some of these other countries down here. And then we gift a bunch of territory. Not a bunch, but a pretty solid amount of territory to Navarra, who's a subject. And we give it to them because there are Catholics there. And once we give enough of them, maybe 10 to 12 provinces, we can flip Sunni. And so we flip Sunni, And then we release some of the nations in Maghreb from some of the territory we'd taken, because we took quite a lot. And then we start annexing Navarra and start annexing some of these other ones. In 1471, we get meritocracy. So in terms of meritocracy spreading, returning to Europe, this type of thing, that is when we get this fully kind of set up. You get unique advances regardless of what tech path you selected at age start. Yes, you get unique advances regardless of that, but the tech path that you choose determines... It adds techs, the 10 techs, to the tree from that path, and that is the only way to get those techs. So those aren't unique techs, it's available to everyone, but that does determine it. Do you core on your own, or you just transform conquered territories into subjects? Generally, you're using subjects. Using subjects is a little bit worse now. As they keep nerfing Dev Province, this makes the integrate cabinet action better, which makes just direct conquering better, but you still want to be conquering with a lot of subjects. Yeah, we have been using a lot of subjects since, like, April, in terms of generally expanding that way, because it's just better. But it's starting to get worse, because Diplo capacity is a lot more pressured as a resource, and they keep nerfing Dev Province. So, as the cabinet actions that aren't integrate province get worse, then obviously at a certain point integrate province is better. The best cabinet action is still increase control. I'd really like to see that nerfed. It's really, really tedious, but technically speaking it is the best, because you just shuffle around increase control and you get 30 things like a lot higher. What do European colonies in America look like in the latest patches? Do they snake along the coast or they go deeper? They keep colonizing Africa, but they don't... The ones that are colonizing North America aren't sneaky or funny. England generally is colonizing the Americas most or fastest, because I think that they don't actually discover Africa, or they don't get baited by Africa, so England generally is the most consistent in the New World. If Morocco's played by the player, can they deck on Castile? Not a player Castile, but you mean an AI Castile? Eventually. I think you have to eco up a little bit. You need to eco up a little bit, or get allies, but you're not so much weaker. If you get a couple defensive packs, then you're in good shape. If you could somehow, like, ally the Mamluks. How much time does it take to reach every 100 years up to the end? I'm bad at answering this type of question. The first 100 years are way faster than any of the others. Not just from a performance perspective, but there's significantly less micro involved in button clicking in order to play properly the first 100 years. If you just, like, kind of want to skip through a lot of the button clicking, you can make it be relatively quickly, but the first 100 years you can probably do in, like, 5 to 10 hours, and then maybe say that each subsequent one is, like, each subsequent 100 years is 50 to 100% longer than the previous one, or something like this. Closer to 100%, and then decreasing down closer to 50%, but still each one adding more. ROI must snowball. Maybe Dev Province could be effective the larger your country is, so that vassals can't just Dev Province like this as efficiently. Yeah, that's like one thing you could do. Dev Province right now is useful for where you are exiting on a maritime plan, because it does decrease the cost to exit, and so eventually you reduce the cost to 0, and for improving, like, specific veins. Almost the majority of the value on Dev is the proximity cost reduction, and so if you have it along, like, a super highway and you're reducing the cost really low, it gets more and more valuable to Dev Province. And in particular, with everyone having access to an additional 20% proximity cost reduction over land, I think a lot of locations are actually going to be able to push the proximity cost to 0, or a lot of countries, and that this will be kind of metagame warping, because countries that previously could not engage in that play pattern, because Russia could before, can now do it. Like, the Ottomans can reduce it to 0. The Ottomans have to move through a bunch of hills, though, so that's actually kind of a little bit difficult. But they conquer the steppes in the north, I guess. Yeah. Are the PU mechanics the same? Roughly. Have you changed your opinion on construction price crash strategy, Cheese? Well, now it only gives 50%, or now it only gives a 25% discount rather than a 66% discount. So the importance of it is diminished. The strategy is still roughly the same. I wouldn't call it cheese, but the strategy is still roughly the same, but you get a lot less value from it. So there are times where it's more expensive to increase the masonry cost than, like, you just shouldn't do it. You should just build your gold and get your gold going or something like this. So yeah. In 1473, we flipped Muslim, right? We are now Sunni, and so of course Portugal breaks the personal union, or the personal union breaks on death, which is pretty soon after this. They didn't want to get annexed anyways, and in 1473 we deck on Portugal, and we start taking chunks out of Portugal. Just a little bit at a time. We're not going to release the subject there. In theory, we maybe could have, but I just want to get the map of Iberia, like, all one thing as quickly as possible, so we're just conquering. And we embrace the New World. We take Genoa, and embrace pike and shot in 1482. The big idea behind taking Genoa is, generally speaking, there's so much value in actually just taking one singular location if that location's a market center. So, like, Constantinople is really valuable to take. Tunis is really valuable to take. Here, there's another market capital here. Fez has a market capital. Generally speaking, taking market caps is really good. This gives us, this along with a little bit of maritime investment and investment in marketplaces and infrastructure in the trade capital that is, you can only build in the market capital. We gain control of the market, so this is pretty nice. If you get fully annexed as the Papal States, do you become landless country? I don't know. I think it's probably game over. How could you invade Portugal? With a few clicks of a button. Does Venice still die every time? I don't know. We gave a lot of feedback specifically on the Venice start, though. And I think they're going to make it easier. That was a pain point for a lot of people. Kind of recently, for content creators, Netherlands has been a pain point for food. But that's like a solvable issue. But maybe the UI doesn't reflect to the player quite well enough when they're getting into trouble with the food, and it really feels like a light switch. We're not struggling with the food changes that kind of happened last patch, but they are extremely punishing, and they can sneak up on you if you don't understand what's going on. And so that's going to be, I think, a really punishing experience for people who first-time Netherlands. I think the majority of people who first-time Netherlands are going to be kind of cruising, and then food prices are going to spike, and then their run is going to feel super dead, and they're going to be like, wow, I don't understand what happened, and then they're going to start a new game. I think this is going to be common, because it happened to more than one, like, content creator, that issues happened in the Netherlands specifically, regards to food. It also will happen to you in Florence. It'll happen to you in Florence if you make your own market. That actually is the biggest food apocalypse. And we're probably going to do like our own video about Florence specifically. It's either going to be Florence or the Netherlands, just like the food apocalypse video. But the like RGOs, there's two markets, right? There's the Genoa market, and then there's the Venice market, and they both kind of split Central Italy. So Central Italy doesn't have its own market. Having a market's really valuable. So if you're playing as Florence, what you'll want to maybe do is make a market. However, if you look at all the food, a lot of it's livestock and grain, and it's all in the north. Now, when they're splitting a market, and this is Genoa, and this is Venice, it's not an issue. But if you make your own market here in the middle of Italy, you will have like zero food, and you will get turbo dunked. If you haven't prepped this. If you prep it, you could probably withstand it for the little amount of livestock and wheat and wool you have. But if you do not, ahead of time, make that market such that you aren't going to just, like, starve into apocalypse. You're just going to you're going to be in really bad shape. Did they update performance increase notably in the past month? Yes, but I'm not the best person to ask about this. In part because of reasons, but also because I upgraded my computer, so the performance is just obviously better when I upgraded my computer, so there's a big confound there. I'm from Portugal, it was a joke. Yeah, I figured it was a joke. Don't they have a defensive alliance with England? No, they do not. But also, at the point we're talking about in terms of our run, like, we can just run over England and Portugal together. It's, like, trivial. Food shortages will definitely sneak up at you and suddenly murder you, but if you know it's coming, it's easy to prevent. Yeah. This is 100%, like, the way that it feels. Is there a potential Norway to play tall and maybe colonize? I don't know if Norway gets it, but Sweden has this interesting cabinet action that gives them a ton of pop growth, but I think they can only use it on really low pop locations. To make it such that I think that their pop problems are not as bad as they might seem. I think they can also only use it in areas like to the north of them. I don't know if Norway gets the same interaction, so if they do, maybe that's kind of okay. But Norway is still the absolute worst terrain and climate and all this type of stuff, and just seems like apocalyptically bad, and I would not want to play Norway. Like Norway and Tibet, I don't want to play, like, at all. Those seem like really rough. In 1484, we make our first cities in Medina del Campos and Montfort de Lemos, which costs a pretty penny. So I think they're up here in this market that we are making them. I'm not sure exactly where they are. There's Montfort de Campos, so one of them is here. And I don't remember where the other one is, but we make 2 cities here. And this is, I think we played part of this run on the last patch and part of it is on this patch. I think that this phase of the game, this is on last patch, before the huge reduction in cost and requirements to cities. So we needed to get 50k pop, and we couldn't do it with less. But okay, in 1488, we discovered the New World. I know that's like a date that, or a timestamp that people care about. We do it in 1488. And we weren't rushing New World because we wanted to get text out of the printing press tree first. But we do it at a pretty decent pace, and we're the first ones there in 1488, just in terms of how quickly things are going. In 88, we also annexed Morocco, which we had removed Morocco, or we'd subjugated Morocco, fed it to one of our subjects, hoping that our subject would annex them before we annexed our subject. They didn't, then we released Morocco, now we annexed Morocco. Fundak, what's that about? I guess we subjugate them? I don't know. But maybe let's talk about some of the Spanish flavor here, because I do think that there's some stuff that we maybe can talk about here now. But in particular, the lieutenancy is coming into play. And we are starting to build this, and this building is good. It has to be built overseas. It is like a bailiff, but it's a bailiff in the city. And I think that a bailiff in an urban area is actually more valuable than a bailiff in a rural area, and this gives more proximity than a bailiff, +5. And we can build these all over the place in Maghreb. Now, we can push enough control in Maghreb at this point in time that it's not necessary to build these, but these will stimulate the economy quite a bit. And if you kind of understand, if you're Vic 3 brained, you having to pay the maintenance cost of 20% of this cost might seem like it's bad, but if you're Vic 3 brained, you know that this just increases the price of all these things. And so all of your industries that produce those things get more profitable. And so it's actually not as expensive as it seems, and paying 20% of this, because that's the current building maintenance, is really not that bad. But what we also get is 50 nobles. And those 50 nobles will consume more than any other pop type. And so I think it could be the case that just spamming these is actually just net positive for the economy, as a result of the increased nobles and the fact that this is not as expensive as people think it is. What about the armies? it was like really easy to defeat the armies between 1450 and 1550. It was very easy. If it wasn't easy, we would have just hired a bunch of mercs, and then we still would have been able to do it. We didn't need to hire any mercs, but we do at some point in this run fight France, and France is big, and we need to hire mercs to kind of beat France, but we just hire the mercs then. We also weren't maxing out our manpower buildings. I think this is a little bit trappy. The manpower buildings are cheaper than they appear, but they're actually one of the most expensive buildings to have. And if you're not going to be making use of the manpower, it's really kind of starts to be a lot of money. And even though they aren't as expensive as they appear, it is a kind of big cost. And we'd rather spam stuff like a lieutenancy, which I think is more... I think this is net positive stimmy to the economy than spam manpower buildings. Will the Teutonic Order be able to bring the Holy Horde to the New World? Or is it a small tag like Lubeck? Teutonic Order is relatively big at start. I heard that hitting pop capacity halts growth. It does. Is there any buildings that allow you to build multiple times to raise the pop cap? Yeah, but not a lot. You have to upgrade stuff to town and city, mainly to increase the pop cap are the two biggest ways. Irrigation increases it by like 1,000, but 1,000 is not a lot. And it needs to be on a river to build the irrigation. So yeah. Subventing exports intensifies, basically. How did EU5 tackle the droid attack on the Wookiees? With grace and poise. Increasing building maintenance costs means more goods then? My Vic 3 brain is going hard for this, if true. Yeah. Increasing... Well, you just build more of these. You get more maintenance costs, and then you pay 20%, and then the other 80% is free buy orders that nobody pays for. And people are talking or complaining about all the free money on the nobles because of Lemon's video, but like there's 80% of the upkeep on all the buildings is free too. There's a lot of free money that appears in EU5, and then the sliders just destroy money. They don't stimmy the economy at all. So yeah. I was wondering about your current thoughts on Prussia Brandenburg. How is the early game flavor? Well, Brandenburg's really rough to play. Last time we take a look, we haven't looked at them recently. They are really, really rough because they get like minus 20% control, and they don't have much agency on getting rid of that modifier, and is really obnoxious. But eventually, Prussia does have some really sick modifiers for military. You like the Russia gameplay AAR? Well, if they post more AARs, we will react to it. Is lieutenancy the only way to get control over territories that have no sea or land border access? Well, you can also build the viceroyalty, which is the upgraded lieutenancy. We didn't get deep enough into the tech tree to get this, but this is plus 30 instead. And look, I think that this building technically makes it so that you don't actually want to make colonies. We are making colonies not because we thought it was best, but because like I think it's silly not to make colonies in the New World. But I think technically speaking, you just building overseas yourself and eating, having the plus 22 control plus its core, so that's 42 control, plus you build a temple, which is 47 control, and then you build like like mint or whatever it's called, it's 52 control, and then you get maybe minus 5 control from satisfaction, so you're at like mid 40s control. That's way past the threshold where it's better for you to own this stuff than it is for someone else to own this stuff. One thing is though, if you can get enough subject income modifier, you can kind of change that, but like technically this building makes it so it's better to just not have colonies. And our plan was to kind of abuse this building a little bit in Mali, where I don't think we could have gotten enough control, like, without it. Like, I think our ability to push control would have been diminished, but we were planning on taking all of Mali. Can we find West Africa, my guys? My bros? We probably can. If we do this. But we were planning on just extending our empire down along the coast and actually controlling all of West Africa ourselves in the long term. Because there's a lot of really good resources there, And the building that would have really facilitated that, especially because there's low dev, and dev is important for pushing control, would have been like the lieutenancy and like the viceroyalty. So yeah, we also take Kaffa, which is a market in the Baltic or in the Black Sea. We go for our native policy trade, which I don't even know if trade's correct. Or I think it's the other colonial law I'm thinking about, but okay. And we get a really nice mining law called the Royal Fifth, which increases gold, silver, and mercury output by 10%, 10%, and 15%, and subject income by 25%. In theory, also in the final age, you get plus 100% subject income. So with enough modifiers like that on the colonies, it can be worth it to make the colonies, but technically it's like, it's not worth it with this building. Even irrigation only gives 1k pop per level. Forms a plan for Yuan further. Gotta hit 2 billion pops. Yeah, then you just put irrigation everywhere. If your goal is to hit maximum pop level, you maximize irrigation and urbanization. Except you need enough food to really be able to tolerate stuff, so you are gonna have to deal with that as like an aspect of your thing. What's this? Thank you for the 1377. Let's see what the thing. I gotta refresh my stream elements because it's not updating properly. Thanks for the content. Thank you so very much, Anonymous. Get some holiday. Got some holidays from work to play EU5 for release. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. A lot of people are planning on having a family emergency then, which does seem to also be a strong play as well. Are there, thank you so very much for the donut. Are there any smaller, lesser-known religions worth looking at in terms of mechanics, flavor, bonuses? Not on my radar, but almost certainly. Or like the Nahuatl or whatever religion is actually strong, but like, I don't know how you flip that or something like this. Have we played Poland yet? A little bit. Can you talk about their unique advances? They have one that's really good for RGO level. They have a little bit of burgher max tax. I think they have peasant max tax. I think they also have a proximity modifier. So they're pretty solid in terms of modifiers. I think Poland's weakness, just generally speaking, is geography. Like, geographically, they're just in an awful spot. Because they're semi-landlocked. Has there not been... They're semi-landlocked. And then there's a bunch of rough terrain. It's flatland, but it's like the vegetation's like there's a lot of vegetation. There's not really big open clearings. In multiplayer, I think you're in between Hungary and Boho. So if there's a Hungarian player or Boho player, you don't want to be like on Poland, because like your natural expands just start to get really rough. It's just all out to here. It's like hard to get a bunch of control everywhere. They don't have enough proximity modifiers. So like they get some good bonuses, but I think their geography, and they don't have like a lot of population. I think their geography and pop like make them a lot weaker. We are gonna take a closer look at Poland in a sec though. Because we played Bohemia a little bit, we played Hungary a little bit, and now we have to play Poland a little bit, because we are trying to get at least 50 years on like all the top 30 countries. We have it on most of them, but we're trying to push a little bit more. Cheap food on a mass scale was part of my plan. They revealed subsidized buildings, so I plan to mass subsidize food production. Most of the food production's from RGOs, which just automatically work, but yeah, you can subsidize the sheep farms. And you'll stack food stuff. We're gonna have a video on food. Pretty close to release, I think. Is there still almost no demand for horses? No demand for, like, Europeans. Asians demand horses a lot more. But yeah. Is naval combat brain dead like EU4? Naval combat's similar to EU. You just kind of run the navies into each other. How big is the research progress scale? Like, how many months does it take to research one tech? It depends, because your research speed increases and the tech cost increases. But, like, generally 1 to 3 years per tech or something like this. EU5 Fever, GTA 6 Crash, Elder Scrolls 6 Fatigue, Employer's Nightmare. Yeah, basically. all the coming in sick to work or not coming in sick. Is Bohemia still so overpowered? I actually don't even think of Bohemia as all that strong. I've been looking at nations and I've been comparing nations, and like Bohemia, like, so Bohemia's main strength is that they're poised to unify the HRE as quickly as possible. If your goal is to form HRE as quickly as possible, Bohemia is unquestionably the best at this. And if you form HRE, you'll be really strong. Okay, sure. But if you are in an environment where forming the HRE is somehow not feasible, they're really not that strong. There's a bunch of other countries that will get more income faster than Boho, despite Boho having an enormous amount of really good RGOs, because Boho doesn't have a large population, and there's a lot of countries with really good RGOs. We played as Japan, and we could spin up the eco faster. We played, like, Korea can spin up the eco faster. Hungary can spin up the eco faster. I haven't checked Mali, but, like, even as Castile, we could spin up the eco faster than you can as Boho, right? So a lot of these, like, big premium, like, Western European, like France, England, Castile, I think are just better than Bohemia. We're currently making a list of top countries, and there's going to be 3 or 4 Europeans in there. Maybe 5, but probably 3 or 4. And I don't think Bohemia makes the cut in terms of top 10. So I wouldn't call them overpowered, but if you're just like saying, is the HRE overpowered, and Bohemia is the best at forming the HRE, then yeah, HRE, if you just look at Bohemia and as a tag you just see all of the HRE and you're just inferring revoke, then yeah, HRE as a tag is insane. Like, because you just have like all this. But I hadn't taken a close look at Boho, and then like when I took a closer look, I'm just like, they're clearly the strongest in Germany. If you're only evaluating German nations, they're just definitely better than the other ones. But I don't think that they're insane. They also just don't have very good unique content. Hungary actually has good unique content and gets a bunch of good resources and has more pops and has insane RGOs as well. So I think Hungary is better, unless you're assuming that the HRE gets formed. Like, your power is so contingent on the HRE, and then the HRE is just warping in terms of perspective, because, okay, Holland is OP when they form the Netherlands, or when they form the HRE as well. You could go Netherlands into HRE. Brandenburg into Prussia into HRE is going to give you the most bonuses. Austria can form the HRE as well. None of them can do it as fast as Bohemia. If speed of forming the HRE is, like, the metric, then yeah, they're just insane. But, like, if it's not, then yeah. I was wondering how food works and food RGOs, and food goods as a resource if I have 100 wheat and I export. Oh, so the food RGOs create food in a location when it's produced, and I think if you export it away, you lose that food production, but it's kind of a little bit opaque and difficult to tell. I know importing food kind of alleviates food a little bit, but it doesn't do it by a lot, because you have percentage modifiers increasing food production, and that doesn't work on food that's imported. And also, the food you have to pay is when a province specifically has a deficit. And so having provinces in deficit is what causes you to have to pay an amount for food. Now, usually the food price gets collapsed to be trivial, and it doesn't really matter that you have to pay the food price. But what happens is if you have several provinces in deficit and the food price is incredibly low, it's like you're paying 5 to 20 in food, something like this. But then if the food price spikes, suddenly it's like 80, 90, 100 in terms of food prices. And so if you didn't have any provinces in food deficit, then you wouldn't have to deal with that. But by importing food, you can keep the food price from spiking. Or you can help to try and prevent the food price from spiking. Let's see. Can you flip culture and religion in the country with marifying and getting air, the desired ones? You can flip culture if you get a large enough share of the culture. I forget. I think it needs to be a pretty big chunk, and then you might have to move your capital, something like this. How difficult is Denmark? Can you join the HRE? You could probably join the HRE. Denmark's... I have to take a closer look at them because they just got nerfed. We're concentrating too much on who's strong. It's not like EU5 is about competitive so much. It's more an RP game, like maybe Vic 3. Yeah, but like people want to know. People want to think through it. This type of thing. I mean, I'm thinking of it from a multiplayer balance perspective as well, where like I think nobody's like gonna let you form the HRE, and then boho is like. I mean, they're not bad, but like they're not insane. I got from Ukraine, I'll pick whichever's closest to my hometown and go with it. I get you. Hungary #1. Yeah, Hungary looks good. Do RGO scale indefinitely size-wise based on population in the province, or is there a cap? There doesn't seem to be a hard cap, but like, there's a pop cap, yeah. How's the revolution portrayed? I haven't gotten into the like final age and like had the revolution stuff. Mainly because I wasn't getting onto it from a rig perspective, but also I'm trying to play like the top 30 nations, like a decent amount. So I understand which ones are best, and so it's hard for me to play that deep, and also, yeah. Have you experienced the Reformation? Is similar to, is there a League War? There is a League War. Is a fashion, the League War creates a situation, and multiple sides join the different sides of the IO. I don't think I participated really in the League War. I think when it popped for me, I kind of just sat it out rather than participating, so I don't know exactly how it's portrayed. What prevents Castile from decking on Granada and Aragon and Portugal early? Nothing. You can do that if you'd like. I suppose you would not want to deck them all at once. But yeah, you can fight everyone pretty early. There's nothing that prevents you. And you have a decent amount of levies. I think you kind of take things slow because of you don't want to know CB everyone, so you want to make sure you get the CBs. The CBs you do through Parliament, or you get events that allow you to deck on Granada and Morocco. You get the CBs through Parliament. You could use this to deck on Portugal. I don't like just annexing them super fast and generating a bunch of infamy. Having allies is somewhat useful. If you generate enough infamy to create coalition, no one will ally you. So there is some stuff of that nature. I have a feeling Bohemia annexing all of the HRE will suffer, and it would be better to slowly internally expand instead. Yeah, this is another thing, is you're actually just in the HRE. Where did we put that? Where did we put the HRE? Mom, I lost the HRE. When you have a whole bunch of tags, they use like Dev Province and they use Parliament, and Dev goes up way more with a bunch of tags. And if you annex early, you stop all this from happening. So, Cheese of Mystery, thank you for the follow, Big Nice. This just stops happening. The longer you wait before annexing, the like more top end you get in some sort of sense, because some of these places will get really dev'd up if you just leave them alone. So I'm not even convinced it's like optimal to annex them all early or something like this. Is it worth fighting in the League War? Well, I like flipped religion because I didn't want to be on Catholic, and then I didn't want to duke it out as Protestant because like I didn't care and I didn't want to be Emperor. Thank you for your answers. I want to play Yuan now. As Yuan, I would recommend playing with the intention of flipping Wu, and so just only building up in Wu. But yeah, the theory crafting excitement at the very start is definitely cool. Are there no Civil War situation early in the game? There's some situations, I think the War of the Roses, there's War of the Roses, like, content for, England pretty early. Trying to remember if anyone else has, like, a Civil War thing at the beginning of the game. I don't really know. Have you done runs with one location countries at the start? No, because none of them have any content. One location is incredibly small. It's real small. Like, one province, like, I think the smallest we've played at is maybe Holland. So, yeah. Is more fun to play in the endgame than EU4? Probably. I played to the endgame, like, once in EU4, and that was for, like, a one tag, one faith. Hey, look, guys, it's Winnie the Pooh. Do Protestants have their own unique advances? They have, like, 3. So, but their religion mechanics are better than Catholic. Like, a lot better, but they only have 3 advances. I kind of felt bad about that when I was flipping Protestant. I was a little upset because you go from 60 advances to 3. It's like, bro, what? But because Catholics' advances aren't that good, but they have like 60 of them. Because you can't research everything, and in general, research has been kind of nerfed in terms of speed, having quality of text is more important than having more. So it's not like the biggest deal. I still think Protestant's probably better than Catholic, but maybe I'm just shitting on Catholic too much. Why Wu instead of Ming for Yuan? Wu's got a better location for the capital and, like, working up a power base. I'd rather just, like, start there. And then for Castile IRL, Castile went through a civil war after the king died. Plague allowed Granada to survive or thrive for a century. Well, like, if you tank your... You could always pop a civil war as anyone if you tank your legitimacy and stab enough. Everyone could always pop disasters if I do that. We'll have to check out in November when the game comes out. Yeah, you'll just do, like, you can just do one run, you, like, sit, you wait, you see where Wu gets popped out, but it's kind of just the best location for a capital in China. Catholic is starting religion, the Protestant becomes the upgrade, yeah. You think the AAR revoke is still possible pre-1500? Well, not right now, because it's bugged. So, nothing's possible right now, which I suppose is fine, but fixing the HRE so that's not buggy, and Japan's, like, situation, I think, are high priorities for the devs. I think the polish on situations, now that we're at the home stretch, just making sure all the situations work properly, I would guess, or if I were prioritizing things as a dev, I would care much more about that than balance. Because honestly, like, balance is, like, super whatever. Like, it's, like, who cares about this, like, proximity differential when no one's going to be min-maxing or doing whatever on release. And there's going to be some people who do, like, absurd things and screenshots and stuff, but, like, for player experience, like, people are going to be annoyed if they can't, like, run the situation for the country that they play at game start. So I think all the situations at game start, like, have to be really good. And I think that making colonization and tweaking that to be better are probably really high priorities, or should be. Sounds like they need to work on Catholicism and Protestantism. I might be shitting on Catholic more than I should be. It just... So here's the thing, is it feels really bad to research a tech when you know you're going to flip a religion. And I get this feeling a lot with Catholics, so this might make me think that Catholic is, like, worse than it is. They have, like, some okay techs, but, like, honestly, like, you can't tax the clergy is, like, meaningfully bad. Because now avoiding taxing them for the research speed isn't as valuable as it was before. There's just, like, a lot of stuff for it that doesn't seem that good. And I think that just generally flipping Sunni every time. Like, for colonization, you get bricked by the Treaty of Tortillas. Like, somewhat, although I think you can get your way out of the situation eventually. It's, like, there's just a lot of, like, little things that add up to eventually being a big thing. Another tech we got in the Castile run is Royal Council governance reform, which gives minus nobles power, plus 10% tax efficiency, and also trend towards centralization. So this is unique for Castile. Castile's got a lot of really good stuff. At this point, we have 35% Sunnis, so we dropped down. Or we'd gotten around 35% Sunni after releasing a bunch of stuff, and at this point we're back up to 44% in 1506, so we are getting decent conversion going. We start pushing granaries, which, if Meph is still here, the amount of food storage in a province relative to the population informs pop growth, so you're going to want a lot of food storage. And then in 1520 we actually have a little bit of a tough war against France. It doesn't seem like we can win without hiring mercs, so we just hire a bunch of mercs. And we just, like, go to town with superior numbers. I think we lose a couple of the opening battles, because here's the thing. We're pushing naval values. You can't actually drill your armies and push naval values at the same time. Because you'll get too much army tradition, and your naval value will decay, and this will be bad. So, if you push naval, your armies tend to suck. Which, from the perspective of multiplayer... naval's got, like, a really high opportunity cost because you have to have shit armies. And so this is our problem with France, is their quality of army is just better, and frontage now kind of, like, matters, and so, like, it's a little bit difficult. And so we just, like, hire a bunch of mercs and just wood chipper them into France. How's proximity calculated if your territory is not connected, like the Palatinate? You don't get any of it. Yeah, you gotta use bailiffs. How's the new update? It's good, it's good. Have you had time to play with it and notice difference? We had. We, like, went through a list of differences kind of closer to the beginning of the video. Any chance Norse is in-game? I think it might be, but we haven't seen it. Does Connor have access to EU5? You'd have to ask him. I don't want to say who has access if they're not talking about their access. I, for one, would be waiting for the I Conquer the World by adding every nation to HRE and revoking. Yeah, that would be a bit of a video. There's our... What's nerfed about tech growth? So they made tech cost, like, flat value more. And then in compensation, they gave you percentage research speed when you embrace an institution. But the way that math works is that makes research speed just slower, and also it makes research speed modifiers, which used to be like one of the strongest modifier in the game, not that valuable because it's so diluted from your embracing tech street. Hey, Ingor, thank you for the new Prime subscription. Big nice, thank you so very much. But yeah, it makes it so that, like, look, it used to be like literacy would give you, like, your literacy gives you percentage tech, and that used to be enormously, far and away, the biggest source of percentage tech research speed you get. Now, you get 5% from each institution, so if you embrace all the institutions in the first 2 years, or the first 2 ages, which the first age is only 5 years long, just as a point of emphasis, you now have 30% research speed. At the third age, it's 45%, then 60%, then, 75%, right, etc. And so this makes the value of 5% research speed a lot less, especially because they increase the flat cost of all research in later ages. And so it doesn't represent more tech in the same way it did before. And so having the clergy be super happy is less valuable than it was before. How bad is carpet sieging still in the late game? Well, they build less forts. In the late game, they might eventually build more forts. I think people in general, other content creators in general, seem a lot more upset about forts than I do. So, like, if you're comparing what they've, like, said about forts, you maybe need to ask them. As it stands, you seem to be able to assault forts, like, decently well, if you're willing to pay the cost of doing so. You can hire a ton of mercs to be able to really just wood chipper people into assaulting forts. And so I think that, like, and also, like, historically speaking, warfare with the Star Fort was just actually Siege Simulator and, like, Dysentery Simulator and about sitting in trenches and slowly digging, and that's actually how warfare was conducted. And so, like, I don't have a hate for not having this fast-paced conquer playstyle or this type of thing. I don't have this, like, visceral reaction to it. Like, it seems fine as a simulation, and if that's the way the mechanic works, I'll just play around it, because I only care about, like, figuring out what's optimal, like, and I'm not insulted by the fact that what's optimal seems historic, like, which is what it seems like to me, or, sorry, what the playing field I'm playing on seems historic. Like, I am not made upset by the fact that forts seem like really good ways of controlling areas, because forts were really good ways of controlling areas. So, yeah, you have to choose between either naval or land. Seems kind of bad design, but maybe it works, I don't know. I think it's fine. I don't know if it seems bad design. I think if you're gonna have values as a mechanic, that seems fine. I think if you disagree with naval or land, then just in principle you're disagreeing with, the values spectrum in general, where you have one thing on one side of the spectrum and then another thing on the other, right? Because bro, we drew that first line so straight and now we'll never live it down. right? You have one thing on one end of the spectrum and another thing on another. And so if you just disagree with this way of formulating values in general, you disagree with land and naval, but, like, I think if you are fine with this, then I don't know. Like, it seems like a reasonable way of doing it. The binary choice between quality armies and navy is a little weird. Wasn't an issue for the Brits. No, the Brits get a freaking insane unit in the final age, though. It's like plus 10 initiative. They're like, heavy infantry is like initiative infantry. But you're talking about the drilling. You can't drill. Yeah, I think you should be able to do a maritime version of drill, a naval version of drill, to make it so that you can do both. Specifically in references to the drill army, I think that, yeah, you should... I suggested that there be a maritime version of drill, so that you could raise your... Because the problem is you can't get anywhere near as much navy tradition as you can army tradition. And whichever one you have more of, it pushes you towards the value. Thank you for bringing the content for EU5. You did a lot of community posts, these past few months, notably on Reddit. You're very welcome. Yeah, I did try and... There was a stint when there was basically no one was answering questions at all, or, like, giving public feedback. I pulled back on this a little bit because there's other people saying stuff, so there's less of it's less of an information desert. But I did try to respond to every single Reddit post. And I think I did. For, like, a period of, like, 2 to 3 months or something like this. Is the AI still going insane with building forts? No. How does the Teutonic Order interact with the HRE? Can they join? I don't know if they can join. I haven't checked. Do armies ping-pong? Do you have to chase them halfway across the continent? It doesn't feel like you really have to chase that much. It doesn't really feel like you have to chase that much at all. I think, and if you... Yeah, it doesn't feel like that. I think forts should still suck to siege, but with less forts. I would be fine with... And I said this a little bit on the podcast... On the podcast, I'd be really fine if forts were way more expensive. I honestly think it's a little bit silly that cathedrals only cost 150 ducats and forts are like 200 ducats. Because these were massive projects. Like, just in terms of as a simulation and the scope of things, look, it should not be the case that the cost of a cathedral is the cost of, like, 3, like, cobbler's shops where people make shoes. Or something like this, because it's like 50 ducats per production building, and it's like 150 for a cathedral. Some cathedrals took over 600 years to build. But like I understand like what they're doing, but I would prefer cathedrals to feel like this grandiose project that takes thousands of ducats or something like this. Just enormous investment into this, and somehow still also be worth it. So I don't know, the bonus would have to be crazy or something like this. Or maybe, it's funded in some sort of way by, like, expenses that you can't avoid. Like, what if part of your cost of court funded these grand projects? And so when you're paying for cost of court, it was paying for, like, the production of a cathedral. And that was just part of your cost of court. And so eventually, if you have a really big economy and you really pay into cost of court a lot, 10% of it goes towards this production of the cathedral. And you could see the cathedral getting produced over the course of, like, multiple generations as a result of, like, your investment or something like this. This would be much preferable than, like, from a simulation perspective, because it's, like, a cathedral is just a massive thing relative to, like, a toolmaker's guild. Like, like, the scope is not properly represented. I think it's the same thing with forts. Forts were huge. They should just have way more upfront costs. They should be really valuable things, and they should be really annoying to siege. And so I would not necessarily have a problem with it, but also, like, they are not as annoying to siege as they were historically. Like, historically, you couldn't just, like, assault the fort. Once you start getting up there in terms of fort level, and they could take a real long time to siege. So, yeah. Which faction of the player base do you think will be happiest, least happy at release? Well, there's kind of some more, like the modifier stacking sneaking back in makes me a little bit, like, sussy, like, the fact that discount modifiers can reduce proximity cost to 0. There's, like, arcadey stuff, like, sinking in, and, like, maybe a few months ago I would have said the people who like an arcadey system and don't want the game to be as grounded, but, like, recent kind of, let's call them discoveries, but also just developments as well, like, make the game, like, feel, like, in terms of grounding, EU4 is not very grounded. Vic 3, just as a tool of comparison, is pretty grounded. I think the level of grounding is closer to EU4 than Vic 3, probably, with the exception of the level of fidelity of the map at the start date. Like, the map at the start date is just, like, the actual most insane thing about the game. And the level of detail in there is just absolutely nuts. But beyond that, like, there's a lot of things that are, like, I don't like that you can, like, just go through a bunch of different nations and form them all and, like, get a bunch of different tax and this type of thing. Brits also had an issue with a massive army being the size of France and Austria in the 18th, 19th century. Yeah. Or are values generally pairs that are necessarily opposed? The entire premise of it being formulated, yeah. But I don't know, if you're on board with this, then, like, Navy or our land versus naval makes sense. If you go land focus, can you still contest trade as well? Yeah. You can. Naval focus, I mean, like, multiplayer, I think Navy focus is going to be a lot worse, just because the army consideration. Because it's not the case that, like, look, there isn't a way for you to generate a bunch of naval tradition that you can use proactively to make sure your navies win, really. Other than kind of trying to look for modifiers for it. Whereas drill, you can just, like, push your army tradition up to, like, 100. And so there's, like, no equivalency there. And experience on units gives you, like, 20% reduction in damage taken. It's really big. How important are rivers for propagating control market access? Rivers are one of the few things that affects market access. Rivers and roads are, like, the only two. So rivers are huge for market access, which I think people aren't going to really appreciate because the river map mode is not in the, like, bar at the bottom. You have to, like, assign it as a hotkey. They're really good for propagating control early on, specifically pushing it downstream, because it acts as, like, a modern road, which you don't get till, like, the 5th age. So they're also really good, but they don't necessarily go the direction you want. So you're still going to get value out of regular roads. Do forts provide control? They do not. How dynamic is Protestant Reformation? Like, is England, can I make Anglican more reformed than historical? I don't know how much you could change Anglican. Anglican looks pretty good because you could get research. Anglican's kind of narrow in terms of its trigger condition. I think they're expanding it to make it easier for England to get. Is it possible to have one market for a whole of China? Yeah, but it'd be really bad. Chapel with cathedral be upgraded version? Maybe. I mean, like, even then, like, look, the cathedral should maybe cost, like, 10,000 plus ducats instead of 200 or 150. What's your deepest criticism of the game? I don't have one, like, really thing that grinds my gears. Actually, maybe every modifier that is a discount modifier, I wish it wasn't. Which is maybe, like, a little bit small, but when it comes to optimizing and it comes to, like, looking at balance and these types of things, it always just uber breaks the game because you have increasing returns on the modifiers that you get. Like, if you have a minus 20% cost, right? Then that means with 100 units of, let's say, investment, you can now get, you spend only 80 to get the first thing that would require 100, and then you get an additional 25%. Right? So you get an additional 25% return. In terms of the math. Right? Does this make sense? Because you had 100 units before, the 100 units with minus 20% cost, to get the same 100 value out of those 100 units of investment, you only need 80. And so you have 20 left over. 20 on top of the 80. It's plus 25%. You have minus 40%. Right? Reduce the cost to 60. So now you get 66% more. And are you starting to notice the issue here? Right? Which is that this gave us 25%, this gave us 66%. We got 31% more instead of 25%. So we're getting increasing returns. And generally speaking with these games, you just stack these modifiers and you get the reduction super, super low, and then the result is absurd. With minus 60%, right? Now the thing that cost 100 now costs 40, and we have 100 resources right? Now it is... Or actually, is this 40% even right? If we're 40%, if we reduce something to 60%, we have an additional 40... Yeah, it's plus... Okay. Now it's starting to look silly with 60% reduction, because we have an additional 60 left over. We reduce the price to 40, right? 40 is the new price of the thing. Now it's 150%, right? Because we have an additional 40 left over, and we have 60 left over, and then an additional 20. And look how quickly this just ramps up. So we are getting 20% in each jump. We are getting the same modifier, but we are getting way more in return for it. Right? And as someone who likes analyzing the numbers and the math and like figuring out optimization, this as a thing drives me mad. Because with minus 80%, now the cost is just 20. Remember, we have 100 investment points. And now the thing just costs 20. And so now we are going to get plus 400%. Right? And the thing is, when they changed the... Now land values gives minus 10% prox cost. And, no, we don't want to save the work. Not this work. And then, also, we're getting minus 10% off of... that we were previously getting in prox cost reduction. We're getting another minus 10% off of itinerant court. If we get to a minus 100%, which I think at least 4 countries can do on proximity costs specifically, which is a pretty important modifier, it's infinite, right? And so here's the issue. These numbers are getting bigger and bigger and bigger in a way that's non-linear. I feel like EU4 great projects do super expensive building, but it's very player focused. AI is never going to save that much. Well, if it was automatically invested as part of cost court, it would. Cathedral took a long time to build because they were funded locally by bishop or archbishop with revenue from their estates. In some cases, a very rich cathedral could actually be built with a few years only. I mean, I still think they were just wildly... Like, the proportionality is just, like, wildly out of scope. Is it ever too late for a reduction of modifiers to be chased into efficiency modifiers? OE4 used to have research speed, but a reduction modifier, so you can get temporary minus 50% cost boost. If they keep going that way, will you stop playing? I don't think I would stop playing, but, like... someone asked me what annoys me most. Like, this, like... There's nothing that's, like, super, super frustrating to me right now. I guess, actually, when the AI leads the peace deals, and you're fighting on their side, their AI is, like, really stupid. And I don't like that, but yeah. Generalist doesn't like fun, yeah. Yeah, I don't like modifier stacking, creep arcadiness of it at all. Yeah, and before, see, the thing is like, during the Tinto talks, they were like, we're not going to do that. And now, like, you're getting that, because it's I think there's been player feedback that it's a frustrating experience to get your tech bricked, which I've given that feedback, because when your tech tree changes and you lose the tech, that's annoying. I don't think the solution is just giving you all the tech. I don't like it as a solution. Right? I like the idea of giving the Netherlands every single tech that Holland has plus extra, so that when you flip from Holland to Netherlands, you keep all your tree. But if you flip from, if you somehow flip from, Brandenburg to the Netherlands, right, it overwrites all your Brandenburg tech, and now you have to research tech. But I like the idea that you somehow get refunded that tech juice, and you could just put it in Netherlands tech, but that you're swapping, rather than stacking. Do you think we can run in low graphics without the requirement they ask for? I think that's going to be a tough ask, because I think a lot of it is CPU. Problem with land versus naval, this country go to 0, reason to go naval. Well, land giving this prox cost reduction over land is really big deal. How do you feel lately? Are you good? I'm pretty good. Thank you so very much. How you doing? New profile pic. But yeah, the thing is I think it might be better for us to go land value as Castile, because of how all this works and shakes out. The arcadiness of EU4 and divorce from reality makes the game boring to me. Yeah, it's not that... It's definitely less arcadey than EU4, just to be as clear as possible, but the recent developments, in my opinion, in terms of how things have shifted maybe over the past couple months, I think are making it more arcadey, and I think it's the result of feedback from people who are in the EU4 player base, who, to be fair, there's a selection bias here. All the people who abandoned EU4 are not the people in the EU4 player base, and all the people who abandoned it because it lacked grounding, people like me, that was a big reason why I stopped playing EU4. Those people you're not getting the feedback from right now. You're getting feedback from the EU4 people. How well does the AI colonize? They colonize a lot, but they colonize a lot in Africa. Some better, not necessarily exactly where we want it. Game seems to be very content-making dense. There's a ton of content. Multiculturalism easier to achieve here compared to Vic 3? No. Great projects are too valuable for the player, and the AI can't build them to effective. Also, if you have 10 ducats, what do you need this building for? Well, I kind of like it, the idea of it being a passive investment for costs that you are just paying naturally, like increasing, or a percentage of cost of court goes to paying it out. I actually kind of like that idea a lot. Bohemia's government policy for cultural acceptance is pretty dope. Yeah, they get reduced costs, but overall they don't have very powerful stuff. Hold up, I'm not giving the math. You're not getting the math? Minus 90% build cost and upkeep, military, Stellaris Paragons. You're not getting the math. Maybe you are getting the math by the time we get to your comment, though. If $1 can of beans is 80% off, you can now buy 4 extra ones. Yeah. This is maybe the way of looking at it. And if it's 100% off, you can buy unlimited cans of beans. So, what worries me about EU5 is performance and high complexity. I think performance starts to get rough after 200 years in. You could definitely play through the 1500s. We played into the 1700s. But here's also one of the problems is as you fix the AI, you expend more of the performance budget. A lot of limitations you have on AI have to do with we don't want the AI to calculate that because it's performance reasons, and so you have to be efficient. Not only do you have to fix the issue, you have to fix the issue in an efficient way. I had to change the profile pic because I contacted an apartment agency with the email instead of the working one. Got it. When they announced creator access feedback, I always suspected it would be incredibly narrow feedback that would make the experience worse for the general player base overall. Well, yeah, I mean, I think some things get fixated on that are just, yeah, not important or relevant to, the people who are playing their first 100 hours or 200 hours or just this type of thing. Anytime I try and bring it up, I get downvoted in Oblivion by fan buttons. Well, everyone who's talking about the game before the game's released is, a sweat. Or, is closer to a sweat. So, you're not talking to the right audience. You have to go onto forums for other games if you want to do it. Also be better if the AI is, the more armies ships they build, the more... Yeah, there's also so many armies you have to track. That's, like, a huge performance, like, thing. You know, in wars, as they get more and more and more armies, that's, like, a lot to do. Because not only are there that many armies, the armies could consider going to, like, 28,000 locations. Like, yeah. I don't know what the point of increasing the scale is. It doesn't contribute to the points of the game. Play the game, though. Play the game first before you say that, because honestly, it feels like you're playing in a region, and then the world kind of emerges from it. It's very, very cool. Have you tried Americas? We haven't really tried Americas, but this is for me, like, what's, like, annoying me, because, look, there are, like, countries that get this, and then it's kind of like, well, what are we doing here? Like... We're trying to optimize for control, and then, like, suddenly kind of just, like, we have this, like, just, like, I don't know. Someone asked me what annoys me, or frustrates me. From someone who approaches things from, like, a math perspective, and, like, trying to do this type of thing, you eliminate, like, all of, like, the depth and elegance and grace when you have this reduce cost to 0 happening. Like, it's just there's, like, it invalidates systems that are interconnected when you can reduce cost to 0, and it just becomes, like, there's not even, like, a floor. The floor is 0.001, or 0.01, which I assume is only present so that they can actually calculate a path towards the capital, because it has to be non-zero. So there's not even a floor cost, so you just get, like, 100 proximity everywhere, basically, or 99 point whatever, as long as you're not having to run through forests or whatever as soon as you get here. But you can even get over than 100%, and Dev also gives it, so, yeah. 31 days to go. Oh man, we gotta get back to... I have to average at least like 10 hours a day to hit 1337. I end up starting to work on spreadsheets now. You guys might not hear from me for a bit. Starting to work on spreadsheets for the game. I think tomorrow we are going to play Vicky 3, because that is the drop of the really new big mod. I forget the name of it right now. The fantasy mod. And Banar. So I think we're going to play Vicky tomorrow, but then we're probably no more streams or anything until we're allowed to show stuff. Yeah. Do you think that a 5090 Ti and i9-13 would be possible to run EU5 at minimum settings while running an instance of Half-Life Alyx? I'm assuming that this is supposed to be a joke question, but I honestly don't know hardware well enough to, like, appreciate it. I'm bad with the hardware. I know those numbers seem pretty big. I assume those are the very best. I think the drain is really on your processor. I wonder if you could run a fuzzy product cost in the background, like if the goods cost minus 5%. But in my game runs, I'd rather play, unless they use the same engine. I don't think it supports that type of stuff. I don't think it does either. For me, the usual EU5 I would need 1 to 2 years after release to make it a great game, even if it starts good. Yeah, I mean, like, I think, look, I've also had this discussion with the content creators. I think, like, on release, it's gonna be... Look, I just think, like, I think back to, like, recent strategy game releases, like, Civ 7 was awful. Victoria 3's release was rough, too. I enjoyed Vic 3, but, like, Vic 3's release, the UI was so bad. And like CK3, I thought the release was fine. People often like whinge about the release on CK, but I didn't think it was insane. I thought like they gave this like system and like it felt like a solid foundation, but there like wasn't that much there. Whatever. Like EU5, there's so much there, and there's like system, and this is crazy huge shell for a bunch of scaffolding. I think release-wise, it's going to be really, really good. Relative to other strategy game releases. I feel like a negative modifier should be hitting multiplicative. Yeah, well, yeah, so, like, what instead you should do is this number should go up linearly. So what you can do instead of a discount modifier, it changes the new price of the thing. If it costs 40 to move from one location to another, right? the new modifier should be 1 over 1 plus x, where x is the modifier you get. Right? This is the way it should work. And if it works like this, you actually get linear outcomes and results. Because what happens is, if you get a plus 100% modifier, right? It's going to be 1 over 1 plus 1, so it's going to take half the cost, so you can move 2x locations with the same cost. Right? If you get plus 100%, that makes sense. You move double. If you get plus 200%, right? It's going to be 1 over 1 plus x, so it's going to be 1 over 3. With the same investment, you can move 3x. Look at this. It's a linear increase. If you get 300%, plus 300%, right? That's the worst 300% ever. Don't talk about it. 1 over 1 plus 3. And maybe it's mildly patronizing to point this out, but we do want to get, like, a comparison here to, like, what we had up before, which is that this is linearly increasing. Every 100% you get is going to increase your output by 1. And this is decreasing marginal returns relativistically, because if you already have plus 100%, instead of 100% doubling your output, it only plus 50%'s it. But in terms of relative to the baseline, it is a linear increase in value. So this is the way I think the modifiers should work. Whole run is like 70 hours. Maybe. It depends on how much you want to sweat stuff. I think you could play runs. So, like, Playmaker plays runs way faster than I do. He's so much faster than me. I think I spend a lot of time, like, sweating decisions and, like, thinking through things and having the game paused and, like, deciding where buildings go and, like, this type of stuff. So, depending on your pace of play, it's going to wildly differ. So I just tagging it at 70 hours, I think, is just... I think you have a really hard time just saying how much. It's going to be long, though. It's going to be, like... I think if you're playing really fast and playing the end date, like, maybe it's 40 hours, and if you're playing slow, maybe it's, like, 100 plus. Got his computer that can run Crisis run EU5. Only 5 more showers towards 5 more showers till EU5, not like this. I don't know what people want to hear or what to think, since so many people have different ones, but I don't even know what I want or how it would feel. You need to do some introspection. You gotta take a walk, trash waifu, and then come back home and turn off your electronics and sit down with a piece of paper and ask yourself some questions about your life. Like, if you like, feel free to turn off the stream and do this now. Decide what you really want. Or discover, perhaps. Civ 7's release was interesting because I feel most content creators say they really like it, but obviously the community did not so much. I said it was undercooked. The novelty of it was very fun initially, but then, like, after... as I started to push hours in it, it started to feel rough, because it started to feel like it was just really the exact same thing every time. The systems were not robust, the AI was really weak. Yeah. CK3 is more than a shallow, and dev progress had been slow as molasses. I really hope I can play with PC-wise, otherwise I will need to wait at least a year before I can get a hardware. So for me, hardware questions are not a joke. Someone asked me if they could run 2 games simultaneously, so that, like, seems like a joke. That seemed like a joke to me. So here's the thing: if your rig can't run one game, or can't run 2 games, I would suggest running 1. The 30-minute Muscovy video was a huge white pill on the UI for me. As in, you like it? I don't know all these pill terms. I know red pill and black pill. The white pill. It's probably a sex joke. Alright, do you think that they added modifiers as a temporary fix, or this is a permanent direction? Well, so before, to be clear, before the flat land proximity cost modifier was just straight up not applying. It did literally nothing. It was just clearly bugged. But instead of making it work with the way roads work, they just turned it into a percentage modifier. I'm glad that it does something, I guess, but I really would have wanted it to apply after roads. Because the way it would work is, roads don't, like, give you minus 20. They set the value to 20, where 40 is the base cost, right? So what would happen is the cost would go to 38 with your flat cost production, and then it'd be set to 20. What I wanted to do is instead start at 40, go to 20 from the road, and then go to 18 from the flat procs, because I don't want you to be able to stack that much percentage cost, because I don't want you to be able to reduce it to free. But like, what I really want, I want them to use a modifier that doesn't have increasing marginal returns, and instead use an efficiency modifier instead of a, instead of a modifier that is discount and base, is what I want. Yeah. Trash Waifu, thank you for the $5. Do you think that the modifier solutions you give the devs would listen to me? I think that it is a massive overhaul, and that the devs should not do it right now. They should focus on polishing certain aspects of the game and just try and have the best release possible. And the fact that some of these things are a little bit weird should not bother them. And they should triage, focus on what's important, and just do that. I don't think that this is a priority. I was just asked what bothers me, and this bothers me. I don't think it's that big a deal. Like, fixing the HRE in Japan are a much bigger deal. But, I have been saying this for forever, and I have not gotten... I don't know. I've been saying this for forever. I think that discount modifiers are, like, mathematically... I think mathematically you don't want to incentivize increasing marginal returns on stuff, because when you do that, what you end up having is the modifiers have to be so incredibly weak when you have a few of them that they're almost irrelevant. Otherwise, the scaling on the modifiers is just super out of whack, where if you have the modifiers, they become godly valuable as you have more and more of them, and they're useless when you have just a small amount of them, and this creates weird gameplay patterns that aren't, like, fun and rewarding, and you just could do the math differently, and, like, do the same, address the same types of things. And so, yeah, I think that... But I also have been saying for a long time that I do not want the devs to overhaul all the discount modifiers into this at this point in time, because I think that's a massive undertaking. That's crazy on balance. It would break the AI. Everything would just break. So I've been saying simultaneously I want them to change it, just not right now, so I can't tell if they're listening to me or not. But I've been saying it for forever, and I've been tearing my hair out, which is why I don't have any. So, yeah. Are the devs receptive to the 1 plus over 1 plus X idea, do you think? I don't know. I also probably... in general, I'm not supposed to, like, report on what devs say. I can report on what I think that they think, probably a little bit, but to a large extent, I'm not supposed to, like, report exact communications with devs. So, I mean, I'm just gonna say that I've been saying it for a while. And, like, this is the way the modifiers should work. Yeah. League of Legends swapped from discount modifiers to efficiency modifier, for example, cooldown reduction. Yeah, so CDR into ability haste is good. Now, in terms of value, it doesn't change based on your other items. Yeah, so CDR was capped at 40%, though. Right? Before. It was capped at 40%. You just couldn't get more of it. And when you, like... I guess I should have left some of this up on the screen, but the efficiency modifiers really start getting... Or the discount modifiers really start getting bonkers as you pass 50%. So if you cap it at a relatively low percentage, it's not that big a deal. But like because 20% represents you get 25% more, 40% represents you get 33% more. And so these aren't insane, but 60% represents you get 150% more, and 80% is 400% more. So you start really getting escape velocity into increasing marginal returns on the later kind of as you get more and more of it. Yeah. And so even League of Legends, when they had a discount modifier, was not insane and absurd because they had a cap to it. But like Earth mode is uncapped and it's like 90% reduction, and you can very easily see why it's silly and absurd in Earth. That is just how to implement the modifiers because it's easier to balance as well. Yeah, one of we have like every single patch we've had a change to proximity, and so trying to adjust it and get it just right is like very, very difficult when you're using discounts, and is much, much easier if you're using efficiency modifiers. It's slightly concerning there are modifiers in the state when we're like, but like, look, if you're playing normally and you're not stacking 100% like really deliberately, and you're only getting like 30 to 50% at the cap, it's just like, it's gonna look normal, and from a player experience it's not gonna be like, this is a niche like kind of complaint. Someone asked me, Joe, though, like to kind of specify, I really don't think people should freak out about this. Oh, we got a hype train. Chung222, thank you for the follow, big nice. Oh, the hype train was forever ago. Must be gone now. I like throughput and efficiency modifiers that make the investment and the return both larger. I don't have a problem with modifiers stacking multiplicatively with each other, because that's like that doesn't scale out of control like the discount ones. The discount ones approach infinite. Yuan himself said from the beginning he wants to get away from this and didn't want it in a game, so maybe not. Yeah, I don't know. I think they have a current thing in like, look, if you change the modifiers now, AI is going to get completely bricked. Would you rather have you ability to do this in the game if you felt like it, and AI that just actually could do stuff, or do you want to just like brick the AI or whatever? And maybe it won't like fully brick the AI, but like I'm just saying, like, you pull the rug from balance out from underneath balance entirely by completely reworking a modifier, the AI is like just gonna not be able to do it. Playmaker playing fast to practice for EU5 Parabellum. I don't know. I don't. He plays really fast. I don't know. I sit and I think a lot. Yeah. I think EU5 will be rough for many EU4 players to transition to. Vic 3 players in comparison will probably have an easier time. That might be true. I would develop a competitor to EU4 or Vic, but I think the game's closer to EU4 than it is to Vic 3, just to be clear. Just like the divergences are like in Vic 3 direction, maybe. EU5 seems more than good enough that it kills any kind of motivation to try and play a lesser clone. What's your opinion on loan spam to increase your income in comparison to EU4 Vic 3? Well, loans are really bad. Can I run EU5 and EU4 at the same time on my Commodore 64? Yes. Yeah, the loans are really bad because of the Crown Power Malice. Sorry if I misunderstood your reply. Were you asking me if you could run 2 games simultaneously? You just run 1 game. I don't know. I'm also really bad at the hardware questions. I'm not the guy to ask. I barely understand hardware. I like beg my Discord to help me out with it, basically. I'm like, what do I do? Iker, thank you for the 50 sec. For EU5 multiplayer games, what would the meta be to always play in India or China, as they appear to be most impactful in regions to be playing, pop-wise? I think India's really, really strong. I think the Mamluks are really strong, and I think China, Japan, or China and Korea are really strong. I think that I'm not going to give an order. I do have like a ranking in my head of like the top 10 countries I think for MP, but like I think that the big Europeans are going to be strong-ish, but the Europeans, I think, just by virtue of how multiplayer lobbies tend to go, is Europe's going to be oversaturated with players as well, and that this is a consideration for MP, and that countries like Mali will be a lot better than people would consider them to be. Empty threat, but I created an engine in C, not performing enough, so I switched to C++, but it's a hell of a task. Strategy games are funny with reviews, low replayability, didn't recommend 300 hours play, yeah. It shouldn't be hard to implement, to be honest. It should be a pain, but it's not harder. But it includes revamping, like, everything. And a lot of stuff is interconnected. You're just going to break a bunch of stuff simultaneously. Why not just remove this modifier? -% modifier is always memey, because it's something you really play around. Like, proximity is, like, a huge aspect of the game. So, like, you're just removing a huge aspect of the game. I wonder if it's actually moddable. I asked someone who knew about modding, and they said that you didn't think you could just change how a modifier works to an efficiency modifier. Wouldn't it be hard to do since people would be used to the old stuff and really whiplashed if it does change like that? I mean, I think that, look, I don't want them to change it with like 1 month left. I just don't, like, I don't think that's enough time. I'd rather them cook on an internal build than like try and do it. Yeah, just joined the stream and thinking maybe gameplay reaction or to his own gameplay, but he's like, he's got an MS Paint thing. Let's maybe take a look at this. Generalist, do you think there will be standard meta for EU4 player? Well, EU4 players are gonna like paint a bunch. I don't know what. It depends. Like in terms of maximizing map painting. I don't know. Get big, deck a lot of wars. Don't be afraid to use mercs. I think the AI would perform way better with reworked modifiers because handling modifier stacking with non-linear returns is the #1 thing AI sucks at. I agree. The AI would be better with long-term, better with a system where they don't have to evaluate long-term, like, considerations like increasing returns. Have you done a world conquest yet? No. Play in here. The jokes. Not yet. Not yet. What's the first big new system content feature you'd want to see post-launch? I'd want to see auto-expand as a feature because that would really reduce the amount of clicking I have to do to manage the economy the way I want to. That was the case at EU4 too, so most established groups be careful with the way they seed players. Yeah, just like... there's, like, an area that I just, like, view as the scrum. Like, where you just have, like, like, Austria, Bohemia, and Hungary and Poland are all on top of each other. And Brandenburg, too, and they all, like, kind of need to take some dirt or clay off of someone else to, like, have the start be, like, justified. Outside EU, basically, no, outside EU is so good. I think there's only, in the top 3 nations for multiplayer, I think there's only like 3 European countries. Is Bosnia playable too? Or not too difficult to get swallowed by bigger nations? Probably, yeah. I think core issue is that grand strategy, as we know it, is confined to one thread. If you want to calculate it on... No, this is multi-threaded. When's the next podcast coming out? I don't know, I'm probably going to record it with Tarkus, though. I want to do one with Playmaker at some point, but I want to... There's reasons I don't want to do it yet. Can you discuss something more about diplomacy, personal unions, inheriting royal marriages? People are kind of struggling with PUs, and because they can get bricked when you have different marriage laws, so having the same marriage laws is important. You can use influence action to change their marriage laws. A lot of the diplomatic actions, I think, are really underappreciated because I think a lot of people get to the point where they can get coalitioned. If you get coalitioned, you can't make alliances. If you get alliances, you can get favors. Favors, you can like do stuff like ask for money and get like an absolute ton of money. So that's really strong. I think a lot of people are using Diplo Slider on 0. It seems kind of polarized how much you use your Diplo Slider on. Because either you don't want to pay for the cost at all, or you want to maintain loyalty on a certain number of subjects, and it feels kind of binary in terms of how you use it. You either use just enough to keep everyone loyal, which that can vary in terms of the slider, or you don't use any slider at all, because using the Diplo slider for diplomacy specifically, rather than just Diplo capacity and your ability to keep your subjects in line, is a little bit, I think, less of a thing. But we thought about doing an Austria AR. We really kind of did a lot of moves with diplomacy when we were playing Austria because we were trying to lean into that, and I do think the systems allow for a lot of interesting gameplay. I just think that the thing is like you can kind of beat the AI playing aggressively, so it's probably more efficient to be aggressive unless the AI gets stronger at resisting aggression. Any very non-obvious nation choice, you'd have a very interesting starting position due to terrain or resources. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by non-obvious. It's not obvious to me. I mean, Southeast Asia seems like one of the most underplayed regions. People aren't really playing in the Americas too much. Getting hit with the plague that kills 95% of your pops just uber feels bad. And so the thing about playing in the Americas, you just don't get the institutions for like forever. And I don't think there's much you can do about it. The only thing you could possibly do about it is like try and go from Alaska into Asia, or go from like Greenland into Iceland to try and access the institutions. And I don't think you have enough time for that to actually be feasible. So you're just like super behind on tech, and I just don't think you ever get to really catch up. What's the richest country on day one, not counting yuan? Probably Korea. I assume you mean by net ducats income, it's probably Korea. Yeah, Korea. Because they get paid out by the IO for the Middle Kingdom from yuan. And they get paid a lot. And they have the best resources. So Korea just pops off super hard. Where do mercs come from? So mercs leave locations. Locations, one of the ways they lose pops is they go to be mercenaries. And then they fill up a pool of mercenaries. And so one of the reasons why mercs is strong is you can hire mercs that are just from other people's countries. And so you don't lose pop when you hire mercs, effectively. Is auto-managing already in-game? Did they delete it? Auto-managing is in-game. I'm talking about auto-expand, where you set up a parameter for something to build more. So here's the thing, is your building levels get capped, and they get capped a lot based on population. Your population increases. I want to make it so that the thing will just upgrade an additional level automatically, where I have set it up to do exactly that, when it can. That's what I want. That way I don't have to scour the map over and over and over to build stuff in the right places. This would dramatically reduce the amount of micro I have to engage in with the way I play. And also, I would want it to upgrade to the next tier one level at a time when it can as well. Because currently, when you go to upgrade a building from a guild to a workshop, the buildings that you queue up to be upgraded just brick all the guilds. So you dramatically decrease construction. You don't want to actually micro building one at a time, and so you just have to, in waves, just upgrade an entire stack of buildings, and then upgrade another stack of buildings somewhere else, and this type of thing, and slowly kind of retool your economy instead of just having an auto-expand feature where it just automatically upgrades. Because you want to upgrade all your stuff anyways, and you just check up, or the stuff you want to upgrade, you like check the auto-expand box. And so, like, in terms of managing the economy, this would reduce the number of clicks I have to make by an absolutely enormous percentage. If I could auto-expand and I could set parameters to auto-expand. Like, auto-expand, but only when the prices are minus X% overall to auto-expand. And I have over X amount of treasury. That is what I want in terms of game features that are not currently available, like, pretty consistently. Wolgast looks like Winnie the Pooh. Xi Jinping. How many hours, in how many hours will the game come out? A lot. PDX AI decisions, from what I see, are random with weights that change, so AI isn't... The AI is much better economically than it was, like, a month ago. EU4 went through multiple rounds of overhauls in lifetime, so not another question will happen for EU5. Yeah, it's just, like, an on-release thing. I don't think it... Yeah. Things don't change when you pause, right? When they're running the costs, depend on the cost from the tick before, so I figure you can't multi-thread that unless you fuzz the values. Minus 10,000 social credit. No! Krabby says, you can unify cultures in your culture group to form a culture like CK3, right? That button's in there, but like it was bugged last time I tried to do it, so I don't know. I don't know exactly how that works. How strong and viable do you think Mali would be in a multiplayer game? I actually think Mali would really punch above their weight in multiplayer. The thing is like, if people get malaria resistance, they can kind of fight you a little bit easier, but you have a huge defensive advantage. By people either have to march through the desert to get to you, or they have to suffer the malaria, or they have, there's this little tiny snippet of land, like right here, that doesn't have malaria, and so they have to come through this corridor, but you can just put like 50 forts there, man. And say, well, okay, you either have to tolerate the desert or tolerate the malaria, come at me. And just go defensive values and just say, do your thing, my guys. And then also you'll just be super rich, and the best country for colonizing is Mali, currently. Because Mali has malaria resistance, so you get to colonize all of West Africa super easy. And I think, I mean, other people might try and get a foothold in like West Africa, but like I think you could also Diplo your way into getting support for pushing these people off, because I think most people aren't going to be as concerned with the Mali player than they are going to be the person on their borders, and nobody's going to pick. Okay, I mean, someone can pick the Canem Empire, and I guess you would have a rival then, but Canem is like there's no one next to you. I think having no one next to you is really valuable in multiplayer as well. And I think that, like, the downsides of Mali are, like, you have shit dev is kind of the big one. So it's difficult for you to fully reduce proximity costs, but now you have an additional 20%. So, I mean, there are like 3 or 4 countries that can reduce it to 0 now. Like, I think Ottomans, I think maybe Delhi, Vijayanagar, and Russia. You mean non-big names like Japan, China, Russia, England, etc.? I mean, I think anyone with content that is on the smaller side is going to be interesting to play. Korea seems like easy mode in EU5. Yeah, no, Korea is extremely strong. Korea is often multiple of the hegemons. Like Vic 3, the pops cost the most? Yeah. Can't you focus on blobbing and getting a high population to exploit your isolation as a Native American country? No, not really, because you lose 90% of them. Are there any downsides to buying mercs? They're really expensive. They're like 150% the cost base. I think you could stack enough merc cost reduction modifiers that it gets pretty nice, and you just like send the mercs in first into battle, so you don't really have to pay that much maintenance because they're dead. And so there are downsides. The big downside is cost, but like eventually you get throttled by manpower when you're not throttled by gold. So obviously when that is coming in, or when that starts to be the case, do they really not have a resource map mode? When that starts to be the case, obviously mercs are the next thing. I think most content creators aren't playing with mercs. The UI for mercs is kind of rough. We've left a little bit of feedback on it, but like, it honestly doesn't feel that good to navigate. So that's also maybe why. Have the devs playtest multiplayer? Yes, they playtested multiplayer a ton. That is a priority. What are you hearing about multiplayer balance? Not a lot, but I think people are just like... I don't think people are like trying to... Like, I don't think the QA guys are just trying to like spike hard and like mess with each other a ton at multiplayer. They're probably just vibing and trying to test things. How's proximity control in the Balkans? A little bit rough going over the rough terrain. What would be an ideal capital for a Hungary-Serbia controlling the whole Balkans? A Carpathia be? Hungary's starting capitals may be okay. The thing is the place you're going to actually be able to get the most total spread of control is probably in the middle of Hungary, because Hungary doesn't have rough terrain there. And so, we can kind of show what we're talking about here. Wallachia has also got an interesting spot for maybe a capital slash a merchant area. But taking a look here, you see the flatland? Big open area here. There's kind of an area here. And other than that, it would be on the coast, would be the other option. Either like over here somewhere or over here. The natural harbors is going to matter. I don't know what exactly the natural harbors look like, but also here, you see on top of having all this hill and mountain and this type of stuff, you also have this. There's a clearing here, but by far the biggest clearing is in Hungary, so maybe you get a little bit closer to the coast as Hungary, but really, you're not going to be able to efficiently push control of these areas. You're probably going to have to rely on bailiffs or this type of thing. For your own sanity, let yourself keep running EU5 in the computer while you sleep a few nights so you don't... No, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm not going to do that. That's not my style. I'm actually going to play the 1337 hours or I'm just going to miss it. Does AI Korea ever invade Japan or vice versa? I haven't seen it. They might at some point. I haven't seen it, though. Mali outcompeting European powers in America would be a sight to see. You're not... Well, you're better at getting to Brazil. You're actually closer to Brazil. You're closer to that, the trade wind that goes to Brazil. You're closer to it than the Europeans. And so... You're better suited for that. Hopefully AI Mali will be... Well, AI Mali will not explore... The game setting, there's a game setting where if you turn it on, and it's turned on by default, non-Europeans will not explore. So AI Mali will not explore the Americas or Brazil. And because they won't explore it, they won't colonize it. So yeah, they'll only colonize Africa. But they do kind of well colonizing Africa. Does the AI manage its military better compared to before? Does it build larger standing armies? Well, it has way more money. It has like 20 times the money. By like 1500s, it's like 20 times the tax base. Instead of double. And so, yeah, they can afford much larger armies. In our Castile run, we like felt the need to use mercs. Because France's army was... It wasn't way bigger than ours, but it was better quality because we weren't drilling our army because we can't. And they actually have modifiers too. And when I say we can't drill, I mean if you want to push naval values, you can't drill your army. So we just like... And I think the AI drills their army constantly, so they just take 20% less damage, and we don't take 20% less damage. But we just hired a bunch of mercs, and so then we just got in there and we won. Are Native Americans viable, or small packs a game over for them? I think not only does your population just get super bricked, you aren't getting institutions for forever, and there's no, like, high America, like, sort of, remedy, let's call it, which I think is just a strange departure from, like, there's, like, not a way to, like, really catch up in tech. You can have, like, the latest tech, as you start getting caught up, but it'll be, like, very rough. I mean, I think you can I think it's playable, but I don't know what you mean by viable. I think there's no shot that if you're in a multiplayer game and you're trying to be really, really, really strong, that, like, you have to be the only person in the Americas, and then you need to hope that no one decides to interfere with you. Or like make a mix of alliances. So it depends what you mean by viable. Can you have fun and can you like do stuff and expand and do this type of thing? Absolutely, but like I don't know what you mean by. Depends what you mean by viable. It's also going to be like a lot of speed 5ing and like mopping up people around you. Were you fighting France in a war? You declared? I declared it. I wanted to get. They had conquered a piece of Aragon before, and I was trying to kick all of the Catholics out of Iberia, so I did need to fight them in order to do that. The first year of Great Pestilence went from 12 million pops to 4 million for Playmaker. That's probably pretty good. He didn't lose 90%, he only lost 75%. Must have stacked buildings well. There will be a DLC for the Americas for that. A big part of why I'm like on board with EU5 is that they're a lot more grounded. I think that like the Sunset Invasion type stuff is like, I'm not a fan of that type of stuff. I'm not a fan of the modifier stacking either. And it's seeming like feedback from EU4 players about like trying to like I don't like mission trees either. A lot of like the stuff that I don't like that's from EU4 is like starting to creep back in, and I'm not a fan of that. Do you have any suggested capital locations for Vigianagar in a multiplayer game? Yeah. Keep it where it is. With the changes to naval getting a lot worse early on, and the fact that land is a lot better, and Vigianagar is one of the countries that can get 100% land reduction, and the fact that dev at this current juncture gives a lot of dev, or gives a lot of land proximity cost reduction, although multiple people have left feedback that they think it shouldn't do this. All of this combined... Where's India? There it is. I think makes it so that you just want to go land-oriented. Because Vigianagar, they get a 10% proximity cost reduction. And they could get another 20% when they form, or another 10% when they form India. I also think that almost every tier 1 country is probably going to have, in like some sort of optimal strategy, form a tier 2 country with proximity cost reduction, and then a tier 3 country with proximity cost reduction, and then everyone's going to have minus 100 proximity cost, and then be able to completely invalidate like the system of control in the game, which is like what I mean by like nonsense. But this is like relevant if you're going to push naval. Once they fix the bug, right, you're only going to be able to really push into from here to here to here. You're only going to really be able to hit the ports particularly well. But also, ton of dev here, so you actually get enormous prox cost reduction up here. But, so super long term, I actually do think a capital, like in the middle of up here, is good. Or decent or reasonable, but Vigianagar, just keeping it in the capital is fine. You have a unique building that gives you a bonus only in the capital, so this is incentivized to keep you in, I think you're this province under Rachar Doab, but then we have Golconda, Rachar Doab, and these other 2 provinces. All of these together, they have like 50 locations total, and I know I've like beat this dead horse and I've mentioned this a lot, but like just dev provincing on these, really solid considering you're getting like 3x plus the locations. You know, as long as dev continues to reduce proximity cost, this is going to allow you to reach the point where all of these are free to travel through much, much faster. There will be power creep over time with updates. Yep, there will be power creep over time. There will be new sources of proximity cost reduction. This is also like one of the reasons why I really want an efficiency modifier, is because as power creep happens, with reduction modifiers, it creates the nonsense. It creates the nonsense way more. But yeah, I would just keep the capital where it is. The big distinction I would make for India is I don't know if there's a market in here, a market map. I think there is. You want to make your own market. You don't want to just sit on the fringes of 3 different markets, which is, I think, what you start out as Vigianagar. You're just, like, in between 3 different markets. Yeah, you're, like, in the middle of these 3 markets. Yeah, don't do that. Make your own market. That would be the biggest thing. But realize that when you make your market, if you're like here, you can reach the mecha market with all the modifiers. If you're here, you can't reach the mecha market. So like, actually, like, there is this like invisible line past which you can get institutions easier, or you can't. Did you win the war against France? Yes, yes, of course. I've not felt pressured in a war, like, unless it's within the first 20 years of the game. Because I'm not super pushing the military in a really aggressive way anyways, but also, if you spin up the eco way harder than the AI, you have this backstop of mercenaries, which are actually pretty useful. It's going to be interesting to see multiplayer with the mercs, because you can bribe the mercs from the enemy. So, like, money's actually going to matter in multiplayer, because everyone's going to fully expand out their manpower, and then the mercs remain. To be fair, Johan said from the first two TikTok talks that mission trees will be included, just not EU4 style. Yeah, I don't think... I think disasters and situations are the replacement for mission trees, as well as the tech tree advances, unique advances being put on the tech tree. I think that this is the replacement. Did you or are you planning to do any ARs of country that no content creators has done? I'm switching to a point where I'm working on notes for videos, and I'm working on spreadsheets. I do not anticipate doing another AAR. And also, I think that this might be the last stream that I do, unless they give us an updated version with a couple other asterisks that I'm not gonna say. And so, this is probably gonna be it. And we're probably gonna look to wrap up, because I have to get 10 hours today. I have to get like 10 hours every day to hit 1337, and that's with working on spreadsheets, and I'm probably not going to leave the game open when I'm working on the spreadsheets, even though the spreadsheets are for the game, so that's like, it's all pretty tight. I probably have to be like 14, 15 hours a day mostly focused on this. Has there been any word whether they'll change naval thing to increase market access? The thing is, you just make new markets. Like, that's the way it just kind of feels right now. It doesn't allow you to expand out your market very well at all. It makes island chains really bad for market access. You can see here, look, there's like 0 market access along this chain. I don't, the thing is, I don't think there's going to be a change before release. I just kind of doubt it. And I don't think that this is the thing to sweat before release. I want them to sweat, like, polishing situations at this point. Like, now it's like there's a month left, so I don't want any major changes that are going to mess with the AI, and I want the content that the newer player base is going to engage with and pay attention to, which I think is going to be the situations. I want that to be as crisp as possible, and the people who are watching the stream about, like, a Q&A, like, looking and staring at a map and, like, this type of thing, right? Like, you guys are going to play and enjoy the game anyways. For the health of the game, I want the players that have not played a grand strategy game before, or have maybe dabbled a little bit, or played some other type of, like, strategy games, this type of stuff, to have a good experience. And I think that the market access from naval is not a high priority for that. You know what I mean? And while it's something I care about and have left feedback on multiple times, like, I'm playing the game either way, right? And so, yeah, I don't see it as being there. How often does AI Russia manage to form? I haven't seen it yet. I personally feel like they're going to do all history stuff is going to be the goal later on. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it. How many runs have you done already? I don't know, maybe 30? I have, like, 1,050 hours. Can you do World Conquest in EU5? Probably. You'd probably have to sweat it a bit. I don't think you could necessarily do it one war at a time. You probably have to declare, like, fight multiple wars simultaneously. But you get, like, a better CB later, so, like... You get better CVs later, so like maybe it's fine. You think EU5 is multiplayer ready? I think the balance is mainly towards single player. If people want balanced multiplayer, they will make mods for that. Let everyone spend their money on mercs, then come in with a chair and buy all the mercs with all your money you have less. I think it's more expensive to buy, and then they could just rebuy. Wrap up and then gameplay streams. I think we're gonna stream tomorrow for Vic, for Anbanar. Sucks we won't know the rest of the Muslim Spanish round. Oh, we could just finish it up. Because we didn't play, we ran into like kind of a little bit of bugginess in the mid-1500s, so we didn't play too much longer. In 1527, we annexed Portugal, and then we could form Al-Andalus, which was also just like the major like goal of like the run anyways, was being able to do this. So kind of cute. We can form Al-Andalus. We're not going to do it because there's no point. And then Arabic at this point has 100% language power. Mandarin, which I think is the next biggest, only has 52% because we switch everything to Arabic. And then one of our colonies has started colonizing pretty extensively. We have a bunch of colonies in the New World and in Africa. There's a lot of colonies in Africa at this point by other countries. Two Sicilies, Papal States, France are the bigger countries that had made it into there. Two Sicilies in our game is actually huge and kind of a little bit of a menace. France was actually an enormous menace in this game. They became naval hegemon, and we probably should have thought over this more, because they used it to force like 20 countries to embargo us out of their markets. Which initially I was like, lol, okay, whatever, we'll just export to other markets, but then it's like 20 markets and it's just like, bruh. And I think we actually have to do an individual war against each of these market leaders to either take the market center or get them to like annul the embargo or something like this. So actually like a bit of a menace was France in this run. Because we rivaled them, they rivaled us, and they used the naval hegemon. So naval hegemon in multiplayer is kind of going to be like a little bit funny if you just like can force people off their best trade like exchanges by making them embargo each other. That's maybe going to be a bit of a thing. But like we decked on two Sicilies, and then we started having issues with a weird bug. So we didn't go too much further. I'm just glad you were with the game for us for the long term. Even if they go with the alt history stuff, would you stay then? I don't know. Like, if they do a bunch of changes that make it super arcadey, I'm probably gonna be less enthusiastic about it. Developer interview dropped? Pog. Super Pog on PC Gamer. Maybe that's a good point for us to wrap up the stream. Everyone can go check that out. I don't think we're gonna do a react to it live type thing. So maybe you guys check that out. We've had a good one. We're kind of caught up here in terms of answering questions. So I hope you guys all enjoyed. If you did, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Also, if you wanted to support the channel and you know you're going to buy the game, a really good way to do it is to use our code on the Paradox store. It doesn't give you a discount. It's a slight inconvenience, but it does send us 12% of the sale amount. So this is really like a lot for us in terms of reference. And so you come to the website, you go to pre-order. You could also do this for other Paradox games, and you come in and you use the code Generalist in all caps. This is super awesome way to be able to support that doesn't increase any costs, unless you are planning on waiting for a sale or something like this, obviously. Also, if you're not in the US, prices on Steam will be different than prices online, so I advise checking that out. Don't pay extra. Make sure you're just getting the cheapest one either way, code or not, probably. And then other than that, you guys... let's get to that one. Other than that, you guys all have a good one, and we are going to go back to the spreadsheet mines. Anyways, bye-bye now. Take care, everyone. And then for the Twitch viewers, do we want any raid anyone?